for me. But yeah, it's 12.
I hit the
I'm ready
button.
whenever you are. You hit the button?
I hit the
Hell
button.
yeah.
Hell yeah,
Mars, it's
dog.
attacking. Mars is attacking
Oh my
us. Oh no.
god. The
What are we gonna
Mars.
do?
The Mars
They're
and the
coming.
Mars, they're coming.
They're coming for
They're
us.
coming for us, baby. Oh
I'm sure
no.
they probably come in peace. I'm sure of it, even
Yeah.
though they
You know
assembled
what?
in a war formation. I'm sure they're probably here just to like share their secrets and enlighten us as to how to become advanced civilizations. I'm
Like
sure.
every advanced civilization is peaceful. That's
It
just a
has to
fact.
be.
It has
That's
to
just a
be.
fact. Can't argue with that.
Oh
Well,
my god.
hello, everyone rolling in. Today we're going to talk about Mars attacks. Hugh, why are we talking about Mars attacks today?
We're talking about Mars attacks because my girlfriend has put together a little project, a little October Spooktober Spooky Time project, where she has printed out some movies on some cards. In addition to that, which I think I neglected to mention when I drew this card, there is a theme meal, a theme dinner and dessert that coincides with
Oh wow.
what we're watching.
So what did you what paired with Mars attacks?
So for Mars Attacks, we made a meatloaf in the shape of a brain. Ooh, and
That's
she
goofy.
made some little red sugar cookies like the planet Mars.
Sure.
And then she also stopped and grabbed some Mars bars, just to
As you do. I
keep
didn't
things
know they
rolling.
still made those, to be honest with you.
They make them in other countries. We don't have
Ah,
them here because of what we still have a little bit of a bug in our underpants about what the Martians did to our president and our country.
understandable,
That
I would
time
say.
that they made a mariachi, they made us have to deliver a speech with a mariachi band playing the Star Spangled Banner, which I did enjoy personally. I enjoyed it. Um, but yeah, so that was we did that this weekend, and it turned out pretty. It was a pretty fun time. The meatloaf brain came out nice, and
Did it look like a brain?
it looks like a brain. It's a lot easier to make a meatloaf look like a brain than you might expect, actually. Or maybe
Interesting.
like yeah, you kind of just mold it in that general shape, and like maybe take a knife and then squish the two ends together to make two hemispheres, and you're pretty much set.
Well, there
Um,
you have it.
yeah,
Yeah, so we last week you're drawing them out of a hat each week, essentially,
yeah.
or a bucket or whatever. And so this is apparently the first Spooktober stream of the month. Not exactly the spookiest movie, but I'm happy to call it horror adjacent.
Yeah, like
There's
a
a lot
horror comedy satire thing, I
farce.
think. Yeah.
Yes, farce, I think, is probably the best word
Yeah,
for it.
that might be.
Hello, everyone. I see we have some fans of Mars Attacks in the chat. Hope you're all doing well. Love this goofy movie. You know what? I'm a big fan of this goofy movie too. I suppose we could just jump into the opening statements, if you will. We are going to spoil the film. If you haven't seen it, I think
Spoiler
you'll
alert,
enjoy it.
Mars Attacks.
I know they attack
The
pretty hard.
title
Um,
of the movie itself kind of serves as a spoiler.
Well, I mean,
Um,
I don't
yeah.
know. That's the premise, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if revealing the premise counts as a spoiler, but we are going to spoil it, all the juicy details. So, if you haven't seen the movie, I think you'd enjoy it. I think, Hugh, is it fair to say you'd recommend the film as well?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun to watch, man.
Yeah.
Like it's not I understand perhaps why it did. It's a infamous flop for Tim Burton, I think. I understand why, but it's fun, and
Yes.
people are stupid sometimes, and they don't appreciate that. And you know what?
It's
That's
true.
okay.
We don't
Um,
appreciate fun. Yeah, I recommend the movie. We both recommend the movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's safe to say that even after us discussing it, it won't completely sap the enjoyment from it. It's not like
no way.
there's not a lot of wild twists that it's really important that you don't have spoiled for you. So hang around if you haven't seen it, I suppose, but or go watch it. It's an easy recommend for me. Go watch it and then return to the stream.
Yeah.
Whatever, suits your fancy.
It's not
Because we're
too
gonna
long, and it
no,
breezes by. There is not a lot of drag at all in this movie. It kind of,
I don't think so. I think it moves along at a pretty fun, steady pace.
yeah,
Mars Attacks. Mars Attacks, for those who don't know, most people seem to, that is. Uh, This is a movie by Tim Burton. It came out in 1996, and it is inspired by the Mars Attacks trading cards. Hugh,
Yes.
you know a bit more
Yes.
about this than I do. Why don't you give us the lowdown?
Well, I had a few of these when I was a young lad. They were from 1962. They were released as like bubblegum cards, basically.
Yes.
Let me pull up a few of them actually, because I remember one specifically that I had. Um, so my elementary school teacher used to hand these out as like prizes. She had old ones from her collection, and she used to hand these out as prizes to us for getting good grades and such. Um, which we were.
It's fun.
I remember being in like second or third grade probably when I had a few of these.
Was your elementary school all boys as well?
No, it was a Montessori school, so
Oh, okay.
it was we were a little it was already a little
Ugh,
bizarre,
you're one of
I'm one
those.
of those I'm one of those freaks.
That's funny. I legitimately did not know that about you.
Yeah,
Explains
I
a
keep it
lot.
under wraps. Yeah, it's an embarrassing thing. But I really there was one very specific. So okay, they I don't remember exactly how long they ran, but they did not last long in the world of the 1960s. They were popular, however. Some of the depictions of the Mars attacking on these cards, were quite violent for being available to children for 5 cents
Some
in a bubble gum.
sexual
There are
undertones
some
often.
implied sexual themes that also scandalized the American populace in the 60s, and so they were shit canned pretty quick by Tops. And they currently, now I wish I had saved some of these because currently they go for such extravagant prices as like some of them have reached $3,500 a card,
Oh wow.
now I definitely did not keep them in $3,500 condition, but
No, of course not.
but I remember having this one very specifically, and as I want to say like 7 or 8 year old, you might be able to see why this particular image stuck in my head as hard as it did. I was a wee lad at the time, and I did good on a vocab quiz or something, um, and this was my reward for understanding English words. Um,
Yes.
it is a image of some Martians dissecting a man alive on a slab while a barely clothed woman watches from a cage in horror.
Captioned unspeakable experiments.
Yes, unspeakable experiments. These cards evidently did tell a story. They were sort of like a comic strip in
Okay.
card form. It ends, I think, with human beings invading Mars and getting revenge for all of the awful things that the Martians have inflicted upon the human race. A little bit different than how the movie goes, but that's pretty much the story of where the
Interesting. I didn't
inspiration
know there
came
was
from.
a story at all, so
Yeah, it's
that's
it's like a
interesting.
loose narrative. The Martians come down, they do some stuff, they they fuck some bitches and kill some people, and then
As you
the
do.
Humies, come back and purge the Xenos, and
Oh, that's cool.
the
I
Emperor
wouldn't mind
protects.
a Mars Attacks sequel where that happens.
Yeah, that would be pretty sick. Actually, I think if anything, Tim Burton might want to revisit this. I mean, well, probably maybe not.
We-
It probably doesn't have the box
No,
office power that.
I wouldn't really want him to, but it would have been fun to see. Yes,
Yeah.
so Mars Attacks inspired by this trading card limited run, I guess you could call them. Um, it's a very wacky, goofy movie about aliens coming down and fucking shit up for a while. It's funny that it came out so close to Independence Day because there
Yes.
are some very, very, very broad similarities, but entirely different in tone and attitude, wildly different. It's interesting to me that this movie is so how would you describe it? It's kind of a satire, and I think the satirical elements are the best part of the movie for me. There's a lot of wacky, fun scenarios and kills and deaths and sort of thing. But the basic gist of the satire seems to be that a bunch of, like, specifically the president and his scientist advisors are like hopelessly naive liberals, and they assume for no good reason that these aliens, which first of all obviously look very menacing and evil, they assume for no real good reason. We'll talk about the specific line they say because it's quite funny. They assume that the aliens must come in peace because they're an advanced civilization. Obviously, they have intergalactic space travel, so that means they must be peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. They're an advanced culture and race. They have flying saucers. They have to be good guys, you know?
Yes, they have to be good guys. And then they're like several times over, they keep making the mistake of thinking they're peaceful. Like, oh, obviously there must have just been a misunderstanding when they started murdering everybody. So we'll try again. Obviously we're going to assume that that was just some sort of cultural difference, a cultural misunderstanding. And so like that sort of satire is really funny. It's also sort of unexpected for a movie like this. Like, you know what I mean? Because the most vindicated character in the whole movie is the general that's like, no, we need to attack them. They're dangerous.
Yeah.
Which is like the exact opposite how most movies like this work. That
Yeah.
the guy and it's such a interesting anomaly, I would say, in that regard. The sort of war hawk is the most vindicated guy because the aliens are just evil and very like manipulatively and deceptively so.
Yeah, they're literal like little trolls, which I kind of
Well,
like a
demons
lot. Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. The Jordan Peterson symbolic read would be that these are Satan, and this is how Satan
They're
approaches
demons.
you. They approach you with lies.
Are you working on your Jordan Peterson impression? Have you been practicing?
It'll just a little bit. What do you think? You think it's okay? Needs work? I'm thinking it needs a little bit of polish.
It's not bad. It's not a bad place to start. We'll
Yeah.
say that. Donald's Angry says it was a dove that started it, right? Well,
I did
kind of,
kind of a little bit.
kind of. So, um, yeah, let's just jump into the story. We'll talk about it. The
Yeah, why
um
not? Let's go for it.
the movie opens with, like, there's a title sequence with classic Tim Burton, Danny Elfman music and
First, we
visual.
have that scene where the farmer meets the guy who drives up on his
Oh,
tractor and asks if
yes.
he's barbecuing.
Yes, I forgot about that. He's
And
like,
then
"Are you
all
having
the
some sort of
cows.
Korean? You having some sort of Korean barbecue?" And he's like, "No, but I smell it too." And then a whole herd of cows
That's on
um
fire just
run
runs
past.
past the farm, and a flying saucer takes off from behind the farmhouse,
Yep.
disappears, and then we have this, the title sequence of the flying saucers leaving the caverns on Mars with this just a beautiful piece of music from Danny Elfman.
Mhm.
I absolutely love the theme for this. It's been stuck
Really
in my
good.
head since we watched it. I
Oh, it's quite good. Yeah,
yeah.
and so a quick note about the visual effects, because the first taste of visual effects we get in the movie is the cows on fire. It doesn't look good, but here's the thing. Tim Burton has said that he was deliberately aiming for bad visual effects because this is very much a sort of gonzo parody, if you will, or homage to like 50s sci-fi B movies, not like
Not
the
like,
famous
yeah,
ones,
famous ones.
but like the shitty Ed Wood B movies. But it's also like imagine those on Coke is kind of
Yeah.
what this is. It's still very different in style and even in tone, but like the visual effects are not meant to look great. Originally, he was planning to use stop motion for the aliens, and for budget reasons, they went with CGI. But you can tell they kept a sort of intention of making them look bad on purpose or cheap on purpose, and I think it really works, honestly. There's CGI from this period, the mid 90s, that doesn't hold up, but surprisingly this kind of does, because it's not what the best CGI looked like at the time. They
Yeah.
weren't even going for the best. They were going for cheap
They were
and
going,
kind of
which on
stupid
it,
looking.
like in hindsight, it really works in its favor, right? Like that is something that makes this movie kind of, because it doesn't appear dated. You kind of get the feeling that when you're
Yes.
watching this, you're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to look kind of shitty.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they
I think it's really fun. I love the designs of the aliens. I love their giant eyes, and like really menacing, like brows, giant brains, and all that sort of stuff, and like the skeleton teeth. Yeah, it's great. They're a lot of fun. And so the visual effects throughout the movie are cheap and kind of goofy looking on purpose, and I quite enjoy that. So yeah, we have the title sequence, and then the president, played by Jack Nicholson. This is a star-studded affair. If,
really
if
is. Yeah, I
we
was
haven't mentioned it yet, but
I kept forgetting when all the names were popping up on screen in the title sequence. I kept going,
wow.
"Oh my god. Wait, I
the
forgot
movie is
he's in this."
the movie is so star-studded that Danny DeVito has like two lines.
Yeah, Danny DeVito's character is a little bit wasted, I think. I'm
Yeah, I
not
don't know if maybe in like a longer cut he had more to do, or the initial script, because I also learned that the initial script was quite a bit longer and had a higher budget. And then the studio was like, we're not making this movie for any more than 80 million or whatever they said, whatever
yeah.
number it was. I think the original budget was much higher. And so they cut out a lot. They cut out a lot of like scenes in other places around the world and did things like that to trim down. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was more for him to do originally. He doesn't get a lot to do.
Yeah.
Other people get to have quite a bit more fun. Yeah, so the president, played by Jack Nicholson, is briefed on the fact that a massive war fleet of alien ships, classic UFO flying saucer alien ships, have amassed outside of Earth and are just
Yeah.
hanging out.
And fun thing too about Jack Nicholson, because he is playing a double role in this movie, as the president and as a Las Vegas mogul. But when he got the script originally, because they sent it over to him first, I think, they asked him, "Are any of these characters? Are you interested in playing any of these characters?" And his response was, "How about all of them?" Because he kind of wanted to do like a Peter Sellers or
Yes.
Eddie Murphy sort of thing, like Doctor Strangelove or Nutty Professor, where he
Yeah.
played like every character. And they decided to not do. They were, how about we give you two?
Which is such a strange choice. I feel like you either give him like three, because that's like the magic
That
number.
is the magic number, yeah. Because I think that's what Peter Seller does in Doctor Strangelove, right? He does three.
Yes, I believe it's three. He's the president, he's the Nazi scientist, and he's the British RAF commander.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Great movie.
they give him two. They give Jack Nicholson two, and
Which is such a strange, like splitting the baby, because it's so distracting and weird that he's playing two characters. If it was three, you know what I mean? If it was three, it'd almost make more sense somehow. I don't know exactly what the logic is there, but it is odd that they let him play two characters. He's kind of funny as both, but it is very distracting. Because here's the thing about Jack Nicholson: he's always kind of Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of his, but I wouldn't describe him as having the broadest range of all the great actors in cinema history. He's kind of he's similar in every movie, and I like it. He's good. But so like, other than the wacky accent he's doing as the Las Vegas like meth head mogul trying to build a hotel, he's not.
Yeah,
I don't know. He doesn't feel like two different characters
no,
to me.
he not really. It is kind of funny though. When we were so Nikki had not seen this movie when we sat down to watch it, and she did not realize the fake nose fooled her for a hot second. So when he did his smile, his trademark grin,
Yeah.
she goes, "Who is this guy? He's doing a full-on Shining." And I was like, well,
It's him.
It is indeed Jack. It is Jack.
Yeah.
That's him. And she had a moment. She had to take a pause, and just kind of collect herself for a second. But yeah, so it is interesting that they let him do two, and like I would have liked to see him do three, and it's fun to imagine like what he would have done playing every character in the movie, because there's a lot of characters.
There's so many characters. Yeah. There's like maybe 20. So hold on, really quick. I was just gonna run down a list of just who's in this movie, because it's quite a long list. Pulling it up. All right, we have Jack Nicholson as the president and the Las Vegas like real estate mogul. We have Pierce Brosnan as Professor Donald Kessler. We have Sarah Jessica Parker Annette Bening, Glenn Close, Danny DeVito, Martin Short, Michael J. Fox, Tom Jones playing himself,
Tom
Natalie
Jones.
Portman, Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Jack Black. It's
Christina Applegate, and it's funny how much
oh
of like the
yes,
the
I
Micah
forgot.
jokes, like the art school jokes between us are like baked into me at this point now. Because when her name popped up in the credits, I started a soft little clap. Let's
Yeah,
just give a round of applause for Christina Applegate.
yes, and she's in the movie so briefly. It's quite funny that
She's
it's
Jack Black's
anyone famous at all. Wait, no,
girlfriend,
that
right?
was her.
Yeah, isn't that her, the girlfriend? Because Annette
Oh,
Bening
I get
is
yes.
the hippie
Okay, yes.
chick.
No, I think you're right because all I remember, okay, because I didn't recognize her when it was just her as the girlfriend, but then in that final scene where she's having sex with somebody and then they get destroyed by the Martians, I was like, oh, look, it's Christina Applegate. And then for whatever reason in my head, I thought that was the only scene she's in. No, I guess you're right. She is Jack Black's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes more sense. Yeah, a star-studded affair. Some with more to do than others, but I think everyone's pretty funny in this, I would say. Pretty enjoyable
Oh,
to watch
Pam
on
Grier,
screen.
yeah. Ray J is in this movie also. Ray J is one of the kids.
Oh, that's I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wait, which is he the older kid or the
Yeah,
younger
he's
kid?
the older one.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, man, there's a lot of people in this movie. Anyway, um, so Jack, not Jack Black. Yes, Jack Nicholson, the president, is briefed on this, and he has his team of advisors. One of them is a general, feels very much like he's out of Doctor Strangelove. He's got the big aviators and all that sort of fun stuff. Another is Pierce Brosnan, who is a scientist advisor. He's my favorite character in the whole movie because he's so stupid and it's such a great little satire. So they're like, "What do we do?" And the general is like, "Well, we need to be prepared. They could be dangerous. They could be planning an attack. We need to be prepared." And Pierce Brosnan is like, "No, they're an advanced civilization, so clearly that means they're peaceful. Like obviously." And
Dumbass, yeah.
because he has this weird like this almost feels like an anti Close Encounters of the Third Kind in a way.
Yeah, a little
Because
bit. Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind has this weird, I'm gonna call it boomer fantasy of aliens being like perfectly peaceful and noble and just wanting to come down and exchange
It's the
knowledge
Dan
and science.
Aykroyd syndrome. Yeah, like we have so much to learn from the
Yes,
aliens.
it has that sort of, I don't know, I think a bit naive sort of fantasy. And so that's what some of the characters have in this that like, oh, they must be peaceful because they're so scientifically advanced. They clearly live under the surface of Mars and they have all these advanced ships or whatever. So we should plan to have a sort of meeting with them. And they send a signal and they're going to plan to have this meeting in the desert, right?
Yeah.
And
We again
then we
throughout this whole intro, we're introduced to our extensive cast of
very
characters.
expensive, and it's kind of funny the way they do and don't intersect with each other.
Yeah,
You know?
it's
Oh,
really kind of wild.
did we even mention Natalie Portman plays
We
really
did, I think, mention her briefly, but she
very briefly
plays the daughter
daughter of
of
the
the
president?
president,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. She's doing her Natalie Portman thing,
Yes.
no crying though, which I'm quite
No
pleased
crying.
to report she doesn't
So
cry in this one.
yeah, and then we are introduced to our broad cast of characters, all doing all sorts of weird, interesting things. So Jack Nicholson is a like drunk, kind of sleazy mogul in Las Vegas who's trying to build a hotel. And at least at the start, he's dating Annette Bening, who's like a hippie chick person. When the aliens eventually come, she's like sitting out on her car with like crystals and incense, like and like a weird
Like Dan
jewel.
Aykroyd would probably
Yeah,
be, yeah.
yeah. Like she goes on a bunch of like hippie rants that are quite amusing.
Yeah, they're
What
coming
else?
down to Earth because to help us heal, because we've human beings have destroyed the Earth, and
Yeah, all that sort
to
of stuff.
follow their
Exactly.
lead. Yeah, that's
Pam
Annette Bening's
Grier
character.
is a bus driver and mother of two kids that like to skip school, and so she's dealing with them. And she has an estranged husband who is played by Jim Brown. And Jim Brown is a former boxer who now works at a casino in Las Vegas, dressing up as King Tut or some Egyptian pharaoh type
Yeah,
costume.
he's like Joey from Friends dressed as Caesar, except he's Egyptian. You know, it's it's kind of funny.
Exhumed Legume makes a good point. Yes, the advanced equals peaceful attitude kind of forgets how much war accelerates technological development and innovation. Because you either get ahead or get steamrolled. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's absolutely true.
there's
This
actually kind of
movie,
a this is a bit of a tangent, but there's actually kind of an interesting theory. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's essentially a theory that civilizations tend to reach a certain there's a certain point um, that they reach where they can kind of wipe each other off of the earth or wipe themselves off of their planet, and that it's a rather rare thing for civilizations to make it through that sort of checkpoint. I think this sort of developed around the time of World War One, when all that devastation was sort of being wreaked and inspiring things like communist ideology and all that kind of jazz. But basically, it's this idea that it's a rather rare thing for civilizations that start down that path to get over,
make it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
to make it out at the end of the tunnel of technological advancement and destruction by the end of it. So yeah, this added a little, yeah, the Great Filter Theory, I think, is what fired by World War One and that sort of advanced civilization stuff. So yeah, kind of just an interesting thing.
Yeah, I quite like that this movie is doing a pretty good job of making fun of those sort of naive people. And I guess you could say, broadly speaking, a sort of naive attitude about, like, you could apply this sort of thing to, like, the worst actors on the world stage as well. Like, oh, if we just agree to sit down and have talks, everything will be fine. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of naive, I don't know if there's a good word for it, but that sort of attitude. We're like, oh, we'll just set up a diplomatic meeting and we'll talk things out and everything will go great. We'll say we come in peace, we'll shake hands and everything will be fine. And then these obviously evil aliens come down. So we could talk about some of the other characters as they come up later, but the broad strokes of the plot is they set up a meeting to happen in the Nevada desert. And as you know, they have everything laid out. All the news reporters are there, the press, the military, and a few foreign dignitaries, all that sort of fun stuff are there.
Yeah.
One of Jack Nicholson's generals is put in charge of, doing the meeting and making contact with the aliens.
It's the
There's a
one
guy.
who's not the warmonger. The
Yes,
not
exactly.
yeah, they deliberately make a show of humiliating the guy who wants war,
Yeah.
and giving other people the assignments that he wants.
It is so funny because the Warmonger is the most vindicated of all the characters. That's what I find so fun and refreshing and different about this movie. I especially like the line where he's like, "These goddamn liberals,
Yeah.
peacemongers, idiots."
And then Natalie Portman opens the door and goes, "People live here." And
Like, can you calm down? Like, can you be quiet? There's a lot of fun little
I
bits.
really do like that line. There's a lot of fun
Mhm.
fun deliveries and jokes that especially God, there's a lot of jokes that almost feel a little ahead of their time,
Yeah.
especially now. I think in the press conference, there's when before they've set up the meeting with the aliens, there's a reporter who stands up and asks in this really strange hybrid voice of masculine and feminine, looks kind of deceptively like female and male at the same time. It stands up and goes, "Do the aliens have two genders like we do?" And everybody kind of just stares, and then the scene cuts away.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously the joke is like, why? Who care? Like, why is that your question?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna go over the broad strokes of the plot, and then we can circle back to the other characters' weird little eccentric journeys that intersect with this. But yeah, so they have the meeting in the desert, and the aliens show up. They have a little guy with a little reel-to-reel translation machine that they've built, which is pretty funny. And so he says that like, greetings, I am General so and so of the United States. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you. They translate it into the ack speech,
Ack, ack.
which is a fun choice for like how the aliens talk. Um, I learned from a Wikipedia article that apparently that's what they had as a placeholder for their dialogue when they weren't sure what they were going to say, and they decided to just leave that as the way they talk, which is funny. Um, so they say ack, and all that sort of stuff, and it's translated back and it says, "We come in peace." And then everyone cheers, and so someone says, "They come in peace," and then throws a dove into the air. That's my probably the funniest joke in the whole movie for me. Like they're like that's the sort of level of satire that this movie's really, really good at. The aliens say, "We come in peace." And it's like, oh my god, they come in peace. And then
And he
they
throws
throw the
it.
dove into the air. And, like this dumb hippie throws the dove into the air, it's flying around. Everyone's clapping and cheering. And then the Martians see the bird, shoot the bird with their gun. It falls to the ground, and then they just start killing everyone. So later, when looking back on this, the humans will be like, oh, and there must have been some sort of cultural misunderstanding. Maybe doves are a sign of war. Maybe they just hate birds. It was obviously this was some sort of misunderstanding. They can't be evil. We just don't understand their culture, right? That's this. So they have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, but they don't, which is pretty funny. But yes, to Donald's angry, who earlier said, like, well, the dove started it, right? Kind of. But then immediately they just start murdering everybody. So
Yeah, they
it's
start killing. Well, they start killing everybody, and of course I think Natalie Portman's character says maybe doves mean war where they come from, and so they decide to send a message to the Martians. That's basically, we were sure this was a misunderstanding. Clearly.
yes.
Yeah, you have nothing to fear from us. And then, like, they show the Martians, like, print it out and give it to their leader who's reading Playboy.
Yeah.
And he reads it and shows it to the other leader in purple, very clearly inspiring some Invader Zim stuff from later on, the purple and red
Mhm.
ringleaders. And then they read it and they laugh at it and drop it in the
Yeah.
trash. And then they kind of go like, "Oh, of course, let's please allow us to rectify this mistake by addressing Congress," right? Which
At which point they will show up to Congress, go ack into the microphone a few times, and then just start
tap it
killing
to
everyone
test it
there.
too, which I love. They like test the
Yes.
microphone, like they go through the
Yeah.
whole show, and then they start
Yeah.
killing everybody on TV. And Natalie Portman's character is kind of just like bored, sitting on the couch. Guess it wasn't the dove.
It's pretty good.
It's just
Uh,
like it's just yeah. I There's a fun little thing that I noticed this watch through, where they before they go to the meeting in Nevada, they set up the translation machine as being kind of crap, right? So like they have the message through the TV of the Martian going ack, and they run it through the translation machine, and it comes up as like out as jarbled nonsense. It doesn't
yeah.
make a lot of like they kind of all sit around and go, oh,
What the
yeah,
fuck's that
what
supposed
the
to
fuck
mean?
is that supposed to mean? But at first they say something about how they had 800 centuries of civilization. That's one of the lines that sneaks through. And
Yeah.
so like yeah, this is probably not the case from why birds were so because they get triggered by birds a lot. Whenever they see them, they immediately like lose all focus and go for the birds before they go for anything else.
It's
Um,
just a great
which is
choice.
it's an interesting choice, and I like. It's part of me is like, oh, is like the last time they looked at Earth when the dinosaurs were around? Yeah, like 800 centuries before or something like that. They,
Maybe.
maybe they're afraid of them because they are the descendants of dinosaurs. I don't know. Doesn't really play into the
It's just a fun,
movie at
quirky
all. It's
thing.
just fun. Yeah. They see
But
the
they
the
just hate
seal of the
birds.
president of the United States as an eagle, and they freak the fuck out on their ship.
Yeah, they're afraid of birds, but of course that doesn't stop them from just indiscriminately killing everyone all the time. And like the final way they cement the whole like aliens being like goofballs and trying to play on the sort of naive stupidity of the humans who keep like wanting to negotiate and have diplomatic meetings with them. one before I get to the final one. At one point, the president, who's in his war room, gets a call from the French president, and the French president's like, "Not to worry, Mr. President, we've negotiated a peace treaty with them." And Jack Nicholson's like, "No, get out of there, get out of there now!" And then all the French diplomats and presidents just start getting murdered left and right. It's pretty funny. It's funny to make that happen to the French. Like, it's a good choice. And then
You think they would have learned their lesson the first time?
And then of course the final one at the very end when they're just indiscriminately attacking everyone everywhere all the time. Um, they have one of their own translation devices and a megaphone, a loudspeaker, PA system type thing, and they're like, "Don't run, we are your friends,"
Yeah.
which is great. So yeah, basic arc of the story: aliens come to Earth, and the people in charge of the U.S. government are naively stupid about their intentions and fail multiple times to recognize that these are aliens who want to destroy and invade and kill us. And then the aliens launch a full-on invasion and prove themselves quite formidable. Eventually, the warmonger general gets his way, and they launch a nuke at the alien ship out in orbit. And the nuke does absolutely nothing. They send out this little spaceship
balloon
that like sucks up the explosion and then flies back into the ship, goes up to the head of the aliens who takes a hit off of it like it's a hookah or something.
Like when then he starts talking in a high pitched voice, like it's like it converted it
like
to helium.
like a balloon. That's a better way of saying it. Yes. Yeah. And it's like, haha, your nukes do nothing on us. And so if you're watching the movie, you're like, oh shit, how are they going to defeat them? How do they defeat them, Hugh?
Yodeling.
Well, kind of a yodel. There's one particular song, in particular, that the weird sort of grandma with dementia listens to in her old folks' home, and that one particular song drives the aliens mad and causes their heads to explode. And so they just play that one particular song on radios and speakers everywhere until it just destroys all the aliens. Why that one particular song? I don't know, because it's not music specifically, and it's not loud sounds. I know it's not music, or we know it's not music, because at one point the aliens show up to a Tom Jones concert in Vegas and replace the backup singers, and they're like, and they're like dancing along before they start killing everybody. So it's not all music. It's this one particular song with a sort of like old Western yodely sort of singing.
Yeah.
And that kills them. Why? I don't know.
Who knows?
Because it's a fun, goofy movie. That's why.
I mean, of course, it ends on Tom Jones' most famous song, as the birds and animals all dance to "It's Not Unusual."
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great.
And aliens hate country music.
And so that's an example of one of the many different plot lines and weird, quirky characters intersecting with one another. Because you might wonder why that old woman and her grandson out in the middle of the desert have anything to do with the larger plot. And ultimately, it's just that, well, the one song she's listening to causes their heads to explode. So they're like, okay. And there's all sorts of weird ways all these little stories intersect. Before we continue with all the various subplots, Lifnell, however you say that, thank you very much for the super chat, says, hello from Ireland, Yanks. I recently watched Futurama, which is now one of my favorite shows. What do you think of the recent seasons? I find the voice acting, animation, and writing all terrible. I have not seen any of the recent seasons.
Oh.
I've seen all the classic ones, and I quite like it. Very, very funny show.
I really like the classic seasons. The new ones, I didn't find them unbearable. There's nothing like they're not hitting the way the classic ones did, but I didn't mind the Old West episode where they go and farm for Bitcoin. I thought that was kind of funny. I did not I'll tell you, I did not like the one where they started doing the simulation theory of the universe. That one annoyed me because they seem to sort of like be, whoever's writing it now seems to be sort of all in on the idea that we live in a simulation, and
Well, that's really dumb.
I think that's stupid, personally.
Yeah.
But there are some good. I mean, I've had some good laughs with the new one, but it's not. I mean, it's not the same. I think it ended perfectly before. I
Yeah.
don't care for how they keep bringing it back.
Oh, there is the one classic season that I didn't like. What's that one? Is it like the one with like it's sort of like a longer overarching story? You know which one I'm talking about?
Uh, no,
I don't remember. It's one of the old Futurama seasons where I think it was like one long story instead of if I'm remembering correctly. Someone in chat help me out. Because I remember watching it and I remember thinking one season kind of sucked and then watching the season that came after it and thinking it was better again. But I don't remember which one it was. It's been a
maybe
long
season. It
time.
might be season 5.
Yeah, I don't remember liking that one. But all the other ones were really good. Anywho, thank you for the super chat, sir. We appreciate it. So let's talk about some of these side characters and how they intersect with the overall plot. Let's see. Let's start with Jack Nicholson's
Oh yeah,
mogul
this real
character.
quick before we move on. Futurama's 5th season is there are 4 direct-to-video movies that go back to back to back. So that one, yeah, that one's. I
I
mean,
didn't like those. I
yeah,
remember not liking those. I don't remember anything specific other than I didn't enjoy them.
yeah. There's some moments in there that I like about them, but it's not. It doesn't punch as well as the rest. That's basically
Yeah.
my. Anyway,
I
back
don't,
to the
I don't
movie.
know. I always think about there's one particular Futurama joke that I always think about, and it's just like this one phrase has entered my vocabulary ever since. I can't remember which episode it is now, but it involves Fry eating like a gas station egg sandwich, like expired hundreds of years ago, and they're like, "Are you really gonna eat that?" Like, it's so exciting. He goes, "Well, time makes fools of us all." And I don't know why that line makes me laugh so much. Anyway, yeah. So okay, we'll start with the president. The president's story. Him and his first lady wife, Glenn Close, are probably the target of the most satire
Yeah.
jokes, I guess you could say. He's very self-interested. He's when they talk about having this meeting and he's a press conference he's going to give to tell the American people that aliens have come and all that. He's thinking very much about his image as a president. And he's like, I want the speech to be really good. It's got to be historical, but also down to earth. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a later scene where he doesn't have a prepared speech and he kind of sucks at it, which I thought was a funny joke. Um, so the speech he gives is very like it's very interested in his self-image and like, oh, this is clearly a historic moment. I can't believe I'm going to be president when we make contact with other life forms. And he's just hopelessly naive about the danger involved and all that sort of fun stuff. His wife, Glenn Close, is there's a funny scene where she's arguing with her daughter, Natalie Portman. She's talking about like how she's going to redesign
The
the White
Roosevelt
House.
room. Yeah.
Yeah, and Natalie Portman goes, "Well, why don't you just leave it the way the Roosevelts intended?" Something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, because Eleanor Roosevelt was obsessed with. I can't remember exactly what she says, but they're like, she's very much. They're kind of selfish, self-interested people, and she doesn't really care about anything that's happening. She just cares about how she looks and everything. She's getting her picture taken. She like shoves the other guy out of the frame, stuff like that. And then the general arc of his story is just realizing how much he fucked up. So they have the second meeting. He tries to be there in person for when the aliens come to Congress. And rightfully the general's like, we don't think we should have that many branches of the government all in one spot. Eventually, obviously, everyone at Congress gets obliterated by the aliens. And there's a funny moment later where Jack Nicholson
Yeah. His
is
line.
talking.
My favorite
Yeah,
line
go
in the
ahead.
movie.
Go
As he
for it.
says, I want the American people to know that they've still got 2 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad.
Yes. Exactly.
uh, I like that. I like that line a lot. I really like the set design too of the war room, very Doctor Strangelove, right? They come in and
Yes.
it's
There's quite a bit of inspiration from Doctor Strangelove, not just in some of the set design in the War Room and a couple of the characters, but a general sort of farcical, satirical, kind of cynical attitude in a way that I find quite amusing. It's not the kind of cynicism that annoys me. It's just kind of ridiculous and over the top. Just like poking fun at stupid ideas and stupid attitudes people have. I quite like it. It's good. And then eventually Jack Nicholson, he empowers the general to launch nukes, and that doesn't do anything. Um, there's a funny scene where the aliens come to the White House dressed as a woman. Like they have this like woman costume that they've built for one
It's
of
like the
them.
most unnerving part of the movie too, is like how
Yeah.
she moves. You know, she like
Oh, it's fun. It's
I
really
love
fun.
it. It's
Yes.
a
And so
very, very cool effect that they've done with her, and the
like
makeup
dressed
looks
her up as a
insane.
weird like Marilyn Monroe prostitute from the Jeffersons, like some combination of all three of those influences. And they seduce Martin Short, who is the chief of staff, or is it the press secretary? One of those two for Jack Nicholson's president. And he has a habit for having sex with prostitutes and like I guess wooing them by being like, "Hey, you ever been to the White House? I could take you to the White House." He's just kind of a sleazeball, and so that's their in to the White House. They built they built this elaborate woman costume for one of the aliens. They seduce Martin Short's character, and then he brings her inside the White House, and because this is apparently something he does quite a bit. And he's showing off. It's like, oh, this is the Kennedy room. There's a bust of
We
John F.
call this the
Kennedy
Kennedy room, yeah.
where he pulls the head back and presses a button. It opens a secret like sex lounge room in the White House, and they call it the Kennedy room. There's like a fish tank and a giant like circular
Oh my god, the
patent
bed.
sheet bed.
Like when he
Yeah,
runs over to jump on the bed and he lands on it, and there is no give on that thing at all. Like
yeah,
it looks like it is the most uncomfortable bed.
yeah.
He
The way
like
it moves.
practically bounces off of it.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen the movie, the way the woman suit alien moves, it's almost like it's skiing or not skiing.
Skating.
Skating, yes. It's a very strange way of moving its arms. It's quite fun.
Well,
Very,
the way an alien would think that human beings walk, you know, moving their arm. Like it's
yeah.
funny. You don't
It's
see
also funny because the aliens just walk like normal people.
yeah.
So like, why can't they
Why
figure it
would they?
out?
Yeah, like it looks like it's floating or like it's on wheels and like
Yeah,
pretending to walk. You know, like
yeah. It's pretty funny,
it'd be like
and
riding a hoverboard and like just moving your arms side to side to
mm,
like basically. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of rig like that. Yeah. A blank face. Thank you for the super chat. It says favorite Tim Burton movie. Mine is Batman Returns. An
Oh
excellent choice.
yeah, good
Let
choice.
me pull up a list just to make sure
I
I'm not
actually was doing
forgetting
this
any.
before the stream because I was talking with Nikki about this. I this might be my favorite Tim Burton movie.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting choice.
I gotta go through. I
Oh,
gotta go through the list here real
oh,
quick.
I know my favorite. It's Ed Wood. Ed Wood
Oh,
is my
okay. So
favorite.
I have not seen Ed Wood yet. So there are. I was looking through. There are four that I have not seen of Tim Burton's movies. Pee Wee's Big Adventure. That was his directorial debut.
Yeah, that's fun. You'd like
Um,
that.
Ed Wood, which I am planning on watching. Yeah, at some point this month. I think would be nice. I have not seen the
Well,
2019 Dumbo, and I have not seen Beetlejuice.
Ed Wood isn't really like a October spooky movie.
It's like the end of it. Yeah, it's like
But
it's
it
for
is
the end of the Universal project, basically, of going through all
sure.
of those.
Sure. I think Ed Wood is easily my favorite. It's great. I really like Batman Returns, and as been mentioned in the chat, Big Fish is another pretty solid movie from Tim Burton. It's quite a bit different from a lot of the rest of his movies, but it still has a lot of his like Gonzo style, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That one's got a really interesting story. It's based on a book, and I actually got to go where they filmed quite a bit of Big Fish. It's in Alabama. They still have some of the sets there. Have you seen Big Fish?
Yeah, yeah, I like Big Fish.
You know the town they build?
Yeah.
Um, that set is still there. I mean, it's crumbling, but it's still there in a small town in Alabama, and we actually went there.
Oh, that's
It's pretty
interesting.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna go. I'm
Um,
not. Nexus Hives is saying 2001 Planet of the Apes. I'm not a big fan of that one. I don't like that one very much. Um,
do
but
you like Big Fish?
yeah, I like Big Fish.
Good.
Big Fish is a good one. Um,
So yeah, for me, it's Batman Returns, Ed Wood, and Big Fish are probably my three favorite. Mars Attacks probably just below that. Same with Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice. I like Beetlejuice enough, not as much as some people do.
yeah, the Beetlejuice is one that like I'm not on the hype train about it. I mean, I like it. It's not something that I consistently return to. You know.
Yeah.
I did have a little bit Sweeney when in high school. I liked Sweeney Todd a lot. I have since corrected myself a little bit. I revisited it a little while ago, and it just I think I'm done revisiting it now. I think I've soured a bit on that movie, but I think it's the music
Trayvon. Yeah.
is fine enough. I like
I
I really like Danny Elfman when he like that's my favorite part of Tim Burton movies. I think is Danny
well,
Elfman's
you know, it's
scores.
funny about that. I think his best movie, Ed Wood, is one of the only ones that Danny Elfman didn't do the score
Oh,
for.
okay, interesting.
He didn't do the score for it because apparently they got into an argument in the process of making A Nightmare Before Christmas, and that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas. Although he
Yeah, I
didn't
don't know why I
direct that
like.
movie.
No, he didn't. He
Yeah,
produced it, but
yeah.
he they got into it. I think it was because Danny Elfman wasn't allowed to be the acting voice for Jack Skellington. He was only the singing voice. He wanted to be the
Oh,
acting
yeah.
voice for the whole thing, and they wouldn't let him. So I don't know if that's the exact reason, but they got into some sort of argument, and then they resolved their differences for Mars Attacks. But Ed Wood, yes, Ed Wood's the only one that I'm aware of that wasn't scored by Danny Elfman, who has such a great musical style that really fits Tim Burton's movies.
Yeah,
But
like it a
then
lot.
who did the score for Ed Wood is Howard Shore, who I also love. So, oh
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Howard Shore fits with Tim Burton's style too in a different kind of way, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
I'm a big fan of Howard Shore. He's
yeah,
got a really versatile style. I mean, if he can do the Cronenberg movies and the Lord of the Rings, that's
and Ed Wood. Pretty
and he's a pretty versatile guy. Anyway,
Yeah,
Mars
he also
Attack.
but real quick cuz since
Oh,
Nightmare Before Christmas is listed on his feature film filmography even though he was, a producer and writer but not the director. He was also a producer on James and the Giant Peach, and I really like that movie. I
I
think
really
James and the
like it
Giant
too.
Peach is probably one of my favorite of his animated ones actually. Um
Yeah, I really like. I'd love to rewatch that because it's been ages. Um, but it's still very much burned into my brain. I watched it a lot when I was a kid. Good
yeah.
shit. Big fan. But anyway, we're here to talk about Mars Attacks, which I would say is easily in the top half of
Yeah.
his
Well, and
filmography.
the reason that I find this one like I think this one might be I if it's interesting because like I do like Batman and Batman Returns, right? I like Edward Scissorhands. This one feels like him kind of having the most fun of his movies to me. Like this is the one that seems like he's really kind of doing what he wants to do with a film rather than what is, like anything that has other notes for it.
Yeah.
This feels like because he's a big Ed Wood guy, right?
Yes.
And this feels like an Ed Wood movie.
A little
In
bit, yeah.
yeah, a high
On
a
Coke.
higher budget, yeah, a higher budget Plan 9 from outer space on Coke. You know, um, that's kind of what does it for me in this one. Although I do like the others, right? Like Batman is I really appreciate sets and the time dedicated to Jack Nicholson as the Joker,
Hmm.
and I really like the set design and all of the like the really fun Christmassy stuff and the weird spin on the Penguin for Batman
Oh, the
Returns.
Penguin and Catwoman are incredible in
Yeah,
in Batman Returns. It's basically not even about Batman,
no,
but it's so good. Uh, like I was their number one, and they treated me like number two. Yeah, there's so many great moments in that movie. Blank Face, thank you for the super chat. Says Tim Burton should do more Roald Dahl movies. His weirdness and Burton's weirdness mesh well. Well, the only one that I'm aware is an adaptation of Roald Dahl is his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, or
James
Willy.
and the Giant Peach also. That's right.
Oh, that would be why.
Yeah.
Okay, because I hated his
His Charlie and the
Willy
Chocolate Factory.
Wonka.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his Willy Wonka adaptation is, I mean, it's sort of accurate to the way the book is, but I don't know.
I think it is vastly inferior to the Gene Wilder movie.
Yeah, I like Gene
in
Wilder
every
better.
in every way. That movie's really good. I like the sort of faux documentary feel that movie has. It's really fun and inventive, and I like the songs. I don't think I don't think he was cooking with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And so, well, here's the thing about Tim Burton
You don't
too
like
is that
hip hop Oompa Loompas?
has Tim Burton made anything truly great since Big Fish? I
Oh,
don't
that's a
think
great.
so.
I don't think so either. No, I
I think
really
he
don't.
kind of fell off.
Big
This
Fish
is
is probably the last one that I actually really
That would be
enjoyed.
2003. After that, immediately, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, 2005, Corpse Bride.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one. I rewatched that recently. I don't care for it. Yeah.
We Need Todd in 2007, Alice in Wonderland, 2010, Dark Shadows. He finally made a Frankenweenie movie. I didn't see it. Big Eyes.
Frankenweenie is another one where I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's not something that I ever plan on revisiting. You know the story. I mean, it's just, it's okay. Big Eyes is another one too. I watched it. It's okay. Pretty forgettable. Same with the follow up, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. It's okay. Not as okay as Big Eyes.
I've heard decent things about the Wednesday show. That it's like all right.
Yeah, I've heard things about that too. I did not make it past. I didn't make it past the first episode. I wasn't particularly interested. So
Fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah, Tim Burton. He hasn't made any. I don't think he's made anything truly great, and he's had some real duds. You think
2019's Dumbo was pretty.
woof.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
yeah,
I have not seen Beetlejuice because I don't care.
yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I've heard people say it's surprisingly good, but I don't know if that means it's actually good. You know what I mean? I think it's proved better than people expected in terms of a belated legacy
Yeah,
sequel
from what
of
I've
that sort.
heard, people are quite happy with the fact that he sort of went back to doing more practical effects. So that's nice. For good for him. His CGI era is dog shit, but
It really is, except for Mars
except for
Attacks.
Mars Attacks, yeah.
Yes, and that's our segue back. We did it. Mars Attacks. Let's see. So who else do we have? We have Pam Grier. Pam Grier is the mother to two kids that like to skip school. At one point, she's driving the bus because she's a bus driver, and she sees her kids at an arcade playing a sort of Space Invaders shoot the aliens type game, which is fun. And she like stops the bus to a screeching halt to get out and go like harangue her kids and get them to go back to school. It's a pretty funny scene. I
She
quite like
drags
with
them out
like
of the arcade
I
basically by the
love I
scruff
love
of their neck, yeah, and throws them on
my
the
favorite
bus.
my favorite moment from that is when the other one's kind of out of reach and she says, "Come here," and he's like, "No." like come here, like not till you let go of him. And then she lets go. He comes closer and she grabs both of them. And then she throws them on the bus. She's yelling them to sit down and shut up and get back in school. And then everyone claps.
and then everyone clapped.
And then everyone clapped, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
I find that really funny. Trayvon Washington, I thought you guys loved Dumbo. Well, I love the original movie.
Yeah, I like the original Dumbo movie. I'm not.
Well, I'd say really liked. Maybe loved is too strong a word, but yes, not his 2019 Colin Farrell.
Danny DeVito reboot.
Yes.
Yeah, that nah.
I'm late. Has it been mentioned how absurdly stacked this cast is? It has been mentioned, and it is absurd. You are correct. It's wild how many famous people are in this movie, especially when a lot of them don't have a ton to do, really.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny that they're here. Let's see. So Pam Grier and her kids, yes, she has the estranged husband who is a former boxer living in
Las
Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Yes,
Working
and
at
he's
an
working at a
Egyptian casino.
and he's well liked by the people who work, sorry, who frequent the casino. He's trying to get a raise from his boss, and his boss is like, "No way, man! I can have you replaced. No way." And so Jack Nicholson's skeezy mogul comes along. He's like, "Hey, man, aren't you that boxer? Like, I watched your heavyweight fight back in the day. Hey, listen, I'll pay you 2 grand if you'll, beat up this guy for me. He owes me some money or something along those lines. If you beat him up, I'll pay you afterwards." And he's like, "No, man, I don't do that anymore. I'm trying to get clean. I'm trying to clean my life
I
up."
found a law and don't eat pork. I'm a
Yes,
different man.
I'm a different man. And I love that Jack Nicholson's response to that after he hears him say, like, "No, I'm turning my life around. I found a law. I don't eat pork." He says one other thing. Jack Nicholson goes, "So you gave up pork, huh?"
Gave up pork.
That's like the one thing he fixates on. It's pretty funny. But yes, Jim Brown's character, I don't remember his actual name, but he's one of the more likable people here. He's just, trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get his act together. So presumably it's not elaborated on in any detail really, but presumably, he got a divorce from Pam Grier because of this rough lifestyle he was living, and now he's trying to get his life back together, and he wants to sort of reconnect with them and all that sort of fun stuff. Eventually, he'll try to find his way because they live in Washington D.C., and of course, obviously, that's where a lot of the invasion by the Martians is happening. So
Well,
he's
I mean,
trying
you
to get
wouldn't really know that it was concentrated in one part of the country as opposed
no,
to the
it's
others.
everywhere, but he's trying to get back there specifically because that's where his family is. But one of the weirder things about this movie is that he never really gets there until the very end, and then the end it's over.
Yeah,
It's like,
and when he doesn't talk to him or anything. We just see him walk into the building. Yeah,
yeah,
there's
and
not a lot of
that's how
payoff
it
to it.
ends.
There
And I'm
is
like,
there's even a
okay,
scene where they get that slow zoom in on her after he's been beat up and like mugged by the aliens, where we get a slow zoom in on Pam Grier hiding behind the desolated wall of her apartment, and she just
mhm.
goes, something's happened to Byron."
I felt a
I
disturbance in the
felt a
force.
disturbance in the force.
Yeah. I mean that's essentially what it is. That's what happened. And so we think he's dead because he gets jumped by a bunch of aliens, but it turns out he lived. Hooray!
Hooray, he made
Uh,
it out. Yeah, the
and eventually
yodeling music got to him before the aliens could.
could completely kill him exactly. And so at the very, very end of the movie, he shows up presumably to reconnect with his family, but we don't get to see it, which is a weird choice. I think that's
We do
probably
get
one
to
of the
see Danny DeVito for some reason, so like
That's one of the more that's like the story of this movie in terms of the characters and everything. It's thin, it's serviceable, but there are some choices like that that I think are a little underwhelming. It would have been nice if he got to reunite with his family, and maybe even if he got there sooner, he could have helped protect them from the aliens, and then the day is saved and all that sort of stuff. I would have found that more enjoyable, but at least he survives and he gets to reconnect with them right after the credits roll, I guess.
yeah,
you know
and then we have the donut shop kid played by the awkward phase teenager version of the kid from Witness.
yes.
Who I really loved, like when the Martian on the TV makes the circle with like points a dot in the middle, and he goes, "Oh look, he made the international sign of the donut." He's like obsessed with donuts for some
Yes,
because
because he works at the donut
he works
shop
at a
and that's
donut
his
shop, and that's his
character.
character, is that he loves donuts. Like when he drops
Yes.
his grandma off at the old folks home, and he goes, "All right, grandma, if you need any donuts, let me know." Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
He shows up to the trailer where the rest of his family lives at one point, and he's like, "I brought donuts. Anyone want donuts?" And his mom goes like, how fresh are those?" And he's like, "Well, they were made on Monday." He's like, "Jesus, that was 6 days ago."
That was 6 days ago. All right, I'll have a couple.
Yeah. Yeah, so he lives with his sort of white trash family somewhere in the desert in a
Trailer park,
trailer
yeah.
park, yes. His older brother, played by Jack Black, is the one that his parents like more than him. There's even a line, eventually, spoilers, Jack Black's character is going to die. And when he dies, his parents are like, "The wrong one died," or "Why did it
Yeah,
have to be
basically,
him?"
yeah, they do that whole bit like, "No, it should have been you."
They're comically cruel to him. And they like Jack Black better because he's more like them. This other kid is much more like the weirdo who's into science fiction stuff and doesn't really fit in.
Yeah, I wonder who
Um,
that's a stand-in for.
yeah. But his character is still kind of a joke too, which is
Yeah.
funny. It's not heavy-handed in terms of like who the good characters are, really. Everyone's just kind of weird and doing their own thing. Um, yes, and so his brother is going off to join the military. He's going to be in the unit that's overseeing, the Martian project, whatever that is. And so when they have the meeting in the Nevada desert, Jack Black's character's there doing grunt work, like moving, uh, fencing
moving the
around and
fencing
stuff like that.
yeah.
And then when the Martians just start attacking everyone indiscriminately, they kill Jack Black.
Well, he does this whole like running sequence where he like sprints across
Yeah.
this like absurdly long like expanse of desert, grabs a rifle, like runs over, yells "Die, you son of a bitch," and then like he goes to shoot the gun and the bullets fall out. The magazine falls out of the gun.
And then they kill him immediately.
Yeah, he grabs he grabs the flag, like turns around, grabs the flag, and goes, "I surrender," and they kill him immediately.
It's like, oh, I guess that's the end of Jack Black. He didn't have a whole lot to do. He wasn't really playing typical Jack Black goofball in this. He's kind of like the annoying.
He drops a nice R, a nice.
When he's saying goodbye to everyone in his family, he says goodbye to his brother, and it's like, all right, retard.
Retard, don't touch my stuff.
Yeah, he's playing more of like a dickhead older brother in this, instead of typical Jack Black, goofy, wacky, zany person.
This has got to be one of his first movies too, right? Like it's
pretty early on, yeah.
Which
and then he gets
I love it. I
pretty
love
unceremoniously.
That mid-90s irreverent use of the retard word. Makes me feel like I'm back in high school again when things were normal.
And so, yes, that's the end of Jack Black's character. His family later in the movie will be grieving his loss and preparing for the invasion by holing up in their trailer with a bunch of guns. Meanwhile, that family also has an elderly grandmother who lives in a nursing home, and she has dementia of some kind. She keeps confusing all her children. She keeps calling them all Thomas, which I believe is another son who's not even alive anymore. And so they put her back in the old folks' home, and he's like, "Grandma, do you need anything?" And she just listens to her like, "Ooh yeah," like her
yodeling music. You want to try?
Music?
You want to try that again?
What did it cut out?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's all right. I'm not gonna bother. It's not worth it.
Make the chat's head explode. Well, this is the only way we can ferret out the Martians in the chat.
No, I think we'll just let them hang out. They seem to be doing just fine. And so yes, she's just listening to her music, and she has a cat that's a taxidermy cat that she doesn't seem to realize isn't alive anymore. It's like, you're the cutest pussy cat in the whole world.
And didn't you ever have a pussy cat?
And she's petting it, and it's obviously taxidermied, but she doesn't seem to realize it. Doing fun, sort of goofy stuff there.
She's having a great time. I'm not sure who this actress is, but I am happy for her. She's like one of my favorite characters in the movie because she's just so like cartoonishly demented.
Mm-hmm.
But I like one of the things that I really do like about like the writing for it too, right? Is that he's driving her home, and she's calling him Thomas now, and then she says like, "Oh, Richie was always the best one," and I like that little hint of some character development going on there for him, for Donut Kid. She says that he's always the best one because she doesn't realize who he is.
Yeah, it's a weird like not backhanded, but like an inadvertent compliment. like I don't remember, like I think you're the wrong one, but the one that you actually are is my favorite. Who else do we have? We also have Michael J. Fox and Sarah Jessica Parker. They're both journalist reporters. Michael J. Fox is a sort of vain and jealous reporter who is obsessed with his image, essentially, and eventually when he feels like he's losing Sarah Jessica Parker to Pierce Brosnan, he becomes really jealous. But he's always looking at his own hair and going, "Oh man, my hair looks great in that." and that sort of thing. And he's cares about getting the story and everything. When he's at the press conference, Jack Nicholson's talking about the first meeting they're gonna have, and he's like, "Will the press be allowed to interview the aliens?" Like that's all he cares about. Meanwhile, Sarah Jessica Parker is kind of like a ditzier talk show host who also does some field reporting. She has some show where she asks really inane questions of people, and she's got a little like
The
pet, like
Chihuahua,
yeah,
yeah,
Chihuahua.
the
Uh,
annoying Chihuahua, which is
yeah,
part of the like one of the most iconic parts of the movie, I would say. The
yes.
Chihuahua.
Um, Yeah, so her arc is that she starts off, she's, just reporting on all this sort of fun stuff. She starts off dating Michael J. Fox. Eventually, when this news story breaks, she gets an interview with Pierce Brosnan. And Pierce Brosnan, of course, is the scientist advisor to the president, the one who's naively stupid about the aliens being peaceful. So he goes on to her show and they're flirting with each other. Meanwhile, Michael J. Fox is watching it going like, "Hey, he's flirting with her." He's real
Yeah, oh
upset
my god,
about it.
the flirting is so like cringy and awkward. It's
Yes, it's pretty funny.
I love it. It's
They're
so
very
fucking funny.
stupid characters, very inane, idiotic characters,
Call
and
me
it's kind of fun.
Donald.
Yeah. And then when the aliens take over the news broadcast and everything's like, "What's going on?" He like touches her leg, and Michael J. Fox is like, "He's copping a feel. I saw it." And so eventually she sort of falls in love with Pierce Brosnan's character.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you
they
could say so. Yeah, kind of.
well, yeah, that definitely, but they don't get a lot of screen time to develop that
Yeah,
romance, if you
it's
will.
a strange kind of, so like essentially how it happens, right, is that he flirts with her on the show. Then they're in the desert as the Martians, attack at the big initial attack. Michael J. Fox gets melted, and she pulls his hand off of his skeleton
Yeah.
as they reach for one another across the ground on the desert. She gets kidnapped by the Martians, who
Yes.
yeah, and then Pierce Brosnan will end up getting kidnapped by the Martians, and they die
Well,
together. Basically,
yes.
is how that goes.
She gets kidnapped, Sarah Jessica Parker, by the aliens, and she's in their ship. Next time we see her, they've removed her head. Currently, it's in a sort of liquid jar a la Futurama, while the head of her chihuahua has been put on her body. So now her body has a chihuahua head, and eventually they're going to attach her head to
To
the
a
body
Chihuahua
of the
body.
chihuahua.
Yes, it's
Because it's fun, Jan, get it.
I
You know,
get it.
because the aliens are just goofing off and fucking around and experimenting on folks and killing people for
He
fun
I love
and
how too,
dancing
like, he
along with
hatches
Tom
the plot.
Jones.
He hatches the plot to do this, like to put her head, or to put the Chihuahua head on her body and her head on the Chihuahua body while he's reading a Playboy.
Yeah,
Like like the leap from one to the other. It's like the implications of that are a little strange.
listen, they're just having fun,
They're
man.
goofing off. They're just, yeah.
I feel like this movie does a really good job of capturing the spirit of those cards, like the unspeakable experiments one you
Yeah,
showed
for sure.
earlier. It's maybe not as horrific as those, but it has the sort of pulpy, campy, kind of fucked up energy.
Yeah.
Like these aliens are just evil and they're just destroying people and taunting
And
them
they're having a
and
great
goofing
fucking
off.
time while they
Yeah,
do it. Yeah, which is like, that's probably my favorite part of
yeah,
like, I love the scene. So there's a scene later on where they're attacking the old folks home, right? And they notice that the grandma is listening to her music on headphones. So, classic 90s. She's got her headphones on and she's jamming, and she can't hear the desolation that's going on behind her as
yeah.
they attack an old folks home in Nevada for some reason.
They're just
Um,
attacking everywhere, man.
Everywhere. Yeah, and so they notice that she hasn't picked up on where that they're there yet, so they wheel this giant fucking laser in behind her and like tiptoe up. Which I just like, I really love that they decide to show them doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're goofballs. They're trolls, and they're having a grand old time with it.
Yep. They're mocking them, they're cackling to each other. They're walking around doing all sorts of wacky stuff on their ship in between their invasion attempts. So yeah, Sarah Jessica Parker has is now on the body of a chihuahua. Eventually, Pierce Brosnan will be brought in to be experimented on as well. I think he's just a severed head at one point.
They take his head off, and then they keep all his organs and his limbs. Like, he's separated but hooked up to a bunch of like wires, so like he's kind of
Still
exploded out.
alive, and
Still
yeah,
alive. His organs are all functioning, but he's been dissected.
and pulled apart. And
Yeah.
eventually, he has something of a reunion with Sarah Jessica Parker. And at one point, like when it seems like they're all gonna die, Sarah Jessica Parker's like, "Hey, I've been meaning to ask you something, or to tell you something." Or like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's ask,
it's
because
ask.
she goes like, "Were you flirting with me on the show? Because if you were, I liked it."
It's like the only thing they talk about. Yeah, she like walks up
Yes.
to him on the head, just goes, "How are you feeling?" He's like, "Oh, it could be better." Basically, she goes, "Were you flirting with me?" "Yes, I was. I'm afraid I have a crush on you." "No, no."
I had a schoolboy's crush on you. I've watched your show for years or whatever.
Yeah, and that's priorities. They've got them arranged, right? They're
Yeah. And so they share one last moment. Like the ship gets attacked at one point. It gets rocked, I believe, by the explosion of the nuclear bomb, which doesn't destroy the ship, but
No, no,
does
no.
like,
It's the music is broadcast on a
oh,
radio,
okay.
and like
You're right, you're
everybody's
right, you're right.
exploding in the ship, and so the ship is basically,
Tumbling around.
yeah,
For some
it's doing a Captain America into the ocean, and they fall on the floor and they kiss as the ship crashes. They die.
their heads are like
Yeah,
their severed heads are rolling because it falls off the chihuahua body. It wasn't
yeah.
attached very well, I guess. And so it's just their severed heads are rolling around, still sentient on the ground. Why are they still sentient? Because it's fun. And so they're rolling around, they're sharing their last moment, and then they kiss, and then they die. So that's the end of them. Who else we got? Annette Bening, who starts off with Jack Nicholson's Mogul character. She's the hippie who's like, "Oh, the aliens are gonna come to teach us how to be better and everything, because humanity's destroying the planet and we're all terrible. And these peaceful, loving aliens are gonna come." So she's there in Nevada with her crystal and her incense and like a weird jewel in the middle of her forehead, like meditating on the
Yeah.
hood of her car for when the aliens show up. Um,
Well,
what happens with her
and
again?
she watches the invasion take place, and she immediately reverses her stance. She's like one of the
Yeah.
reasonable ones. She's like, "No, they're evil. We have to," and then she starts drinking again.
Yeah.
She decides that the best place to go to hide from them is Tahoe because it is remote.
Yes. She finds
He,
Jim Brown. Byron is Jim
Byron,
Brown's character, the former boxer, and she's like, "Do you know anyone who knows how to fly a plane or whatever?" Like she's trying to get out of there. She knows him,
because
and she's
they're
like,
coming to Vegas, and she's like, "Do you know anybody who knows how to fly a plane?" It's like, "You think it could make it to DC? Why? I want to go to Tahoe."
"Yeah."
Which is
And
like,
so
it's just funny to
he's
me. I just want to say, like, too, like Tahoe, California, being like remote and it's a place where the aliens won't touch. The trailer park where Jack Black is from in Nevada is
yeah,
immediately a target. Like, it's beautiful that there's no rhyme or reason to why the one would be preferable to the other. Just the movie
exactly.
sass so, and that's what you have to deal with. And
Well, there's
I like
also
it.
there's a brief montage where we see scenes from around the world. Some of them are funny, like they're little postcards, kind of,
Yeah.
where they go to the Taj Mahal and then they pose in front of it and then blow it up and take the picture mid explosion. That's pretty funny. There's like random, clearly like licensed footage from other things of like people in different areas around the world that are getting attacked and
Yeah.
everything. So apparently there were plans for many more of those type scenes that they. I think somewhere I read that the initial. I think there's like 20 characters in the movie. There's quite a few, but originally there were plans for like 60.
And Jack
Something,
Nicholson wanted to play them all.
which I'm pretty sure he said as a joke,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah. ART with the super chat. Thank you so much. Says this plus Independence Day peak aliens invading year. Yeah, that was a big year for alien invasion movies. Well, this one kind of flopped, but independent.
I often get the endings of these two movies. Like, every now and then I imagine that Independence Day the aliens were foiled by yodeling, and then I have to remind myself that that is Mars Attacks, not
Yeah,
Independence Day.
Independence Day is when they have to upload a virus,
Yeah,
right?
Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith have to fly a spaceship into the spaceship and upload a virus. Yeah.
One of the things I like about the ending of this movie, because I've seen it done poorly in other things, like I hate it in A Quiet Place because the movie takes it so seriously, like it's actually really clever, but it's really stupid that they've never discovered that loud noises
Would
hurt
hurt
the
something
aliens.
that makes that
It has very
that
sensitive
hunts
hearing.
with
Oh
sensitive
man,
hearing. Yeah.
wow,
Wow.
who could have imagined
Maybe
that?
the microphone feedback that hurts our ears would hurt their ears even more. Hmm.
Especially if they have really sensitive ears. Wow, genius. But
Wow.
in this, it's not any like that reasonable people would have noticed necessarily, because it really seems to be one song in particular, or maybe yodeling in general. It's unclear that destroys them. And why? Because it's silly.
Yeah,
It's a
the
silly,
other thing that
farcical
I like
movie.
about it too, right, is that there's no way that the kid and his grandma. Well, I mean, I guess there that is sort of what they say happens, but the kid and his grandma go and tell them that it works, and they all start doing it. Like the army
Yeah.
starts rolling through with loudspeakers on trucks playing it. Yeah, they're
Start off
just
by going to a radio station to start
yeah,
broadcasting it. Yeah. And
yeah,
then everywhere they're blasting it.
yeah. Which is exactly what would happen. Quiet Place writers. That is exactly how it would have gone.
Yes.
It would not have taken until a deaf girl, however many years into the invasion to get this to happen. It never would have. It never would have got that far. Ever.
So I didn't see the movie because it looked bad and I didn't really like the first A Quiet Place, but that prequel they made called Day One or whatever, like from the trailers, they're attacking New York City, a
Yeah.
famously loud place.
Well,
Um,
I think the stupid thing about that, right, is we're doing Quiet Place in a famously loud place, but like we're also still operating on the idea that because it's a prequel, right? So if
hmm.
you're near something that's super loud, you can be loud because the aliens won't come to the loud thing. New York City would probably be the safest place on
It's
Earth.
one of them. New York City is super loud, and I really don't like that about it. It's one of my least favorite things, just how noisy it
Yeah.
is all the time. So yeah, like hiding out in the subway, like that sounds like a great place to hide actually, because it's super noisy
You
down
could
there.
literally just go about your business in New York City and you would never
Well, I
know that
mean,
aliens had invaded. Like there's
setting it,
no
yes, setting aside the like you can hide in loud areas because they can't hear you over the rest of the noise. Like, wouldn't that just bother them? Wouldn't that like make them explode?
yeah.
How noisy it just already is right now. I don't know. It seems really stupid to me. Anyway, I think that franchise is stupid, unfortunately. It had some potential, I would say, but
Yeah,
too
I
many
mean like
stupid writing
yeah,
decisions.
it's just well, I mean it had some potential but it still always falls apart where it's like but like how really realistically how long would it take somebody to realize that
Loud.
loud equals win?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Much sooner.
yeah.
Much sooner, I would say. Um, well, I mean, like, don't they shoot at it with guns at one point? Shouldn't the gunshots be loud enough
You would
to
think, yeah, like they do
you wouldn't
shoot,
even
yeah.
need to hit them. Guns are loud. Guns are
Yeah.
really loud. Anyway, fine.
Jesus,
Whatever.
wait a minute, that actually that makes
You wouldn't
so
even need to hit
just
them.
shoot a fucking 50 cal near them and
Yeah.
like they're done. Now
Anyway, yeah, but this is kind of like the goofier, but somehow still more logical version of that, and I think it totally works, especially because the movie is just so absurd in general. Um, Donald's Angry asks, did Mars Attacks use the White House explosion from Independence Day for a gag or recreate it? It's not quite. The White House doesn't explode in this. It gets attacked by the aliens. What explodes is Big Ben.
yeah.
And the Big Ben
And the Taj
explosion
Mahal.
looks
They blow up the
and the
Taj
Taj
Mahal as
Mahal.
well.
But the Big Ben explosion, I think, is like an actual like prop or miniature that they exploded. Like that didn't have like trademark 90s CGI in it. That looked like something actually exploded, probably a miniature. So I think that's what looks most like the explosion from Independence Day. I would assume that's what you're thinking of in your head. Because they did have some fun explosions. Oh, there it is in the trailer. Um, yeah, Big Ben explodes.
Yeah.
There's just a brief shot of. It's the only thing that takes place in the UK at all. They're just like,
Fuck
oh
you,
look, Big Ben.
Englishman.
There it is.
The White House, yeah, but like then the White House doesn't get exploded, but by the end of the movie, the president's daughter is giving her awarding the donut shop kid the Medal of Honor
Yeah.
in
As
Mexico.
if she, as if she's in charge of the country now. It's really it's a weird ending. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, the
Is
ending
that
is,
supposed to be in Mexico?
well, I think so, yeah, because there's a mariachi band there playing the Star Spangled Banner. Like it's
I
like
thought I thought that was like on the steps of the Capitol or something like that.
oh, that like maybe I'm just being racist. I assume that mariachi band equals Mexico.
Maybe I
That's
don't remember.
bias.
But
Corporate
also,
training has taught me that that's not okay.
what I do remember is that the president's daughter is giving out congressional medals of honor alone in front of like it's. I think it's somewhere in D.C. But she's giving out the award. She eventually gives it to the kid from the donut shop, who, along with his dementia-ridden grandmother, helps save the day. And he gives a little speech at the end, talking about the future of America. And then randomly at the end, for no real reason, he throws in, and maybe when we rebuild, we can all live in teepees, because I think that's
In a
better in
lot of
some
ways,
ways.
it's better in a lot of ways. And the
Anyway, thank you.
anyway, thanks. And the president's daughter is so enchanted and swooned by this speech that she comes back and goes, "You got a girlfriend?" uh,
It's
he does
ridiculous.
his little like,
Right.
you don't gotta kiss me if you don't want to. Oh my
It's
god, it's so stupid. Uh,
Yeah, and so Annette Bening's character, along with Jim Brown and Danny DeVito, and a couple other, and Tom Jones playing himself.
they
They're
end up in Tahoe, and the birds and the animals like they land on Tom Jones' shoulder, and he kind of does his Disney princess moment, and then it ends with his song.
yes. Well, I was going to rewind, but yes, that is how the movie ends. Pretty late in the movie, and for no obvious reason other than because it's fun. We're at the casino where Byron works, and we see Tom Jones giving a performance to a very kind of unenthusiastic Vegas crowd. He's doing his residency or whatever. And there's a fun gag where we're seeing him on stage. He has backup dancers behind him singing, and the lights kind of fail for a moment that are shining on the backup dancers. And when they come back up, it's the Martians,
It's
and they're going ack 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 ack, and they're dancing. And then
dancing.
they start killing everybody. Tom Jones barely survives this attack. Eventually, he meets up with Jim Brown, who like punches a couple Martians to death by hitting them so hard that their helmets break, and then they can't breathe the atmosphere. We've established that they have to have their helmets, or in the case of the woman costume that they put on, she has to be chewing nitrogen gum.
I actually really like that too. It's like she has to chew the nitrogen gum to sort of like breathe properly because it's really
Yeah,
I don't know that
it's
like
a fun choice.
it's a
They
fun
didn't need
choice
to.
and they didn't need to do it, but they did, and I appreciate it because it is
Yeah,
like
the
it,
attention
yeah,
to detail is nice for a movie this stupid and ridiculous.
yeah.
I appreciate it because we are going to establish later that if their helmet breaks, they die because they can't breathe the atmosphere. So it's important, I guess, to establish that.
Kind of funny how they do show that you can shoot the helmets and they pop and then they're
Hmm.
done, which basically just means that
Well, you have
everybody
to
in
be
the
you have to be shooting one of their guns to do it, right?
no, they show human guns hit the glass helmets and they break, and then like there's at least one where they like a human gun hits one of the glass helmets and it breaks and the guy dies. But like it basically just everybody else apart from that one guy is a terrible shot. The kids, I love it when the kids like are on a tour of the White House and they pick up the dead Martians' guns and start killing the Martians because video games have
Yeah.
done that. And one of them turns to the Secret Service and goes, "Get the president out of here!" Or it's like, "Get that president out of here!"
Yeah, pretty funny. Like
Uh,
the kids who have practiced like alien shooting video games are the ones who actually know how to handle the aliens, and they're giving orders to the adults. It's very fun. It's very fun 90s sort of thing. Um,
A couple of 90s staples, right? Like headphones
yes,
that completely deaden the sound of the carnage happening behind grandma,
yes.
and also video games in an arcade
Prepare
prepare
you
you
for an
for
actual.
interstellar invasion. Yeah,
Yeah. And I like them bossing around the Secret Service guys. It's pretty funny. And it's fun because like I like the way they pick up their guns and they actually start fucking shit up with them, which is
yeah.
pretty fun. But yeah, so Tom Jones and Jim Brown and Annette Bedding and eventually Danny DeVito all sort of team up and
Oh, and
stick
some
together.
random lady who also works in the casino and is dressed
Oh,
as like,
Cleopatra or
yeah,
something,
Cleopatra or
like a sexy
Nefertiti.
Cleo. Yeah, some sort of sexy. She's just there also. And so they're running around dealing with aliens. Eventually, Danny DeVito gets killed, and you're like, okay, bye. I guess you never really got to do anything in
His
this movie,
introduction, so
but
his scenes are in total. He's introduced during the Martian like address to the world, right when they take over all the TV waves and do their ack, and
yeah,
he is these like rolling dice. Everybody else is watching the TV and he's still gambling, and he goes, "What am I, the only guy shooting craps here?" And then he
yeah.
turns around. That's it. He doesn't like. We don't get a reaction shot of him looking at the TV or anything. And then he disappears from the movie for a while until Tom Jones runs out of his show. And then he shows up and goes, "Oh my God, hey, you're Tom Jones. It's not unusual. Hey, I love that song. Wow, isn't that great?" And then they all leave. And then
Then he gets killed.
then he gets killed. That's it. That's all he has. That's all the movie does with him.
Yes.
That's a little disappointing. I would have liked Danny DeVito to be a little more active. I'm not sure if there was an earlier draft where maybe he did. But this
He
movie was
he
definitely
could have
getting
played the
expensive.
mogul. Could
Oh,
have
he
played
could
the
have played.
mogul
He
or
could have played the mogul. Why isn't he playing them? Jack. God damn it.
God damn it, Jack. I mean, Jack is good as the mogul, but it's just weirdly distracting that he's playing both. Yeah,
Whoa.
Danny DeVito, a little underutilized, I would say, because he's quite a funny chap. And yeah, so he gets killed, and then there's one point where they find the airplane hangar. They have the plane, and they're gonna take off for Tahoe, and Byron stays behind to help distract the aliens so they can get away. He does this little heroic self-sacrifice sort of thing where
It's
he
a,
just runs up and starts he challenges one of the head aliens to a boxing match, and they all stand around and watch it happen and like cheer like they're rooting on their guy, and so he's just punching him in the helmet and stuff.
bonk bonk. it's,
it's pretty, it's pretty funny.
there's so much like balloon imagery, really.
Yeah,
Like yeah, the I mean, when they get the message from the president about like, oh, we're sure this was a cultural miscommunication, it comes in on a balloon, like a balloon swells up and then prints out the message. They
yes,
suck up the they suck up the
the
nuke
nuke.
with a
Yeah,
balloon. Their helmet sounds
his
like a
balloon.
balloon when he punches
Yeah.
it.
Yes. Art, thank you for remembering the exact quote because it lives rent free in your head. He says, "No weapons, no clown outfits, just me, Byron Williams, heavyweight champion of the world." Pretty great. There's a lot of great deliveries, funny little lines, funny little moments. I like that he like challenges him to a boxing match because I mean, this is a goofy, stupid movie, but it is kind of like there's something there in terms of his character, right? Because he's not boxing anymore. He doesn't fight people. He's trying to live that life. He's trying to leave that life behind him. And then the aliens come, and so he has to return to his former glory as a boxer and punch these aliens to death. Like, I don't know, it's kind of fun. I wish he got to reunite with his family in the movie instead of presumably after the movie is over. A little bit of a waste. Because otherwise there's not a lot of heart in the movie, which is fine. It doesn't need it, but a little something might have been nice. But I guess he
Yeah,
does
I think
get to
that's one
have
of the
his
reasons why I like the grandma's line about like Richie was always the best of them, because it kind of gives it a little bit of a
just a
heart,
little
a
something.
little
Yeah.
something. It's not
And
much, right? Because like,
no.
but Richie does end up being like our main hero by the end. You know, he's the one who saves the world and gets the girl.
Yes. But he's kind of like a weird little idiot. I like that about him as well. Um, no, but so he does get to have his little heroic sacrifice where he's like, no, I'll distract the aliens by challenging them to a boxing match, and then that'll allow you to get out. And so
they
that's something.
they accept because of course they do, because it's a stupid fun movie.
Well, as Blank Face mentioned, they have good sportsmanship,
Yeah,
kind of, or like
kind of.
I don't know, kind of, yeah, but I like that about them. I like the way they're characterized in this movie is because they're little trolls and stuff like that. But like when someone's like, "I challenge you to a fight," they like accept the fight
Yeah.
on those terms. You know what I mean? They're not. They don't just shoot him or anything. They're like, "All right, you want to box? Let's box."
Yeah, why not? Yeah, fuck it. Fuck it. We'll
Yeah,
do it live.
exactly.
Yeah. I like cuz I mean the other part, right? Like where they kind of do something that would be the opposite of this, right? You know, like instead of fighting mano a mano, they come into
Mhm.
the war room. They shrink ray the warmonger general who, you know, goes out in a blaze of sort of glory. Like they shrink ray him as he's shooting his pistols, um, giving you know a paraphrased version of the Churchill Nazi speech.
Yeah.
We'll fight you on the beaches. We'll fight you.
I mean, I love that, honestly.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
fucking
ultimately,
hilarious, dude.
I, I I like his character A because he's the only one who's not a naive idiot, and ultimately he gets defeated because the aliens are just too strong for him.
Yeah,
But
they
I
shrink ray
quite
him
like
and
that.
squish him.
I like that he goes out sort of like, you're gonna have to. He's like, we'll fight you on the beaches. He's got that whole thing going. And then he gets shrunk down, and as he's giving that speech, his voice gets higher and higher, which is funny. Classic stuff. And then he's a tiny little guy on the ground shooting his little tiny pistols at them, and they just step on him. They squash him like a bug, which is sad, but he went out.
He went out
He,
fighting even when he was an
yeah,
inch tall. He
exactly.
didn't back down. And
Yeah.
then Jack Nicholson tries to give an impromptu speech. You know, we've showed that he's not great at this, but he gives it one last effort, and he makes this really pathetically like liberal type speech. And the Martian then pretends to have been won over, even like
Yeah.
cries on command.
Yeah.
Like gives him his hand to shake, and I legitimately couldn't remember if this was about to be like a Joker moment where he has a hand buzzer. Like I got
Yeah.
it confused with Batman, where the Joker like kind of does something and like put her there and then electrocutes the guy with a
Mhm.
hand buzzer. But instead he shakes his hand, and then the arm detaches and crawls around behind him and stabs him through the heart, and plants the Martian flag through his body.
And then they go, ack, ack, ack. And then, like, he's like,
And
we
then they
won.
make the
We got
donut
him.
sign, and then they leave.
They do the international sign of the donut.
International sign of the bro.
Uh, so funny. Yeah. I think what I find so refreshing about this movie and like unexpected for a movie of its time period, and I mean, even still today, is that the sort of like naive liberal sensibility is like really like brutally lampooned in this movie, and I find that really funny. Like I've seen this movie described as cynical, and like I don't even know if it is cynical. I just think it's making fun of. I mean, there's some cynicism, sure. There's this sort of callousness, like when Natalie Portman's like, "Well, I guess it wasn't the doves,"
Yeah.
like like people are being killed on screen, and like
Uh,
it's so farcical that no one's really treating it like how you actually would in real life. Um, I suppose there's a little bit of cynicism there, but it is a pretty scathing critique of a certain type of
cynic.
naivete, and I find that really funny because you don't see a lot of that. I feel like more often in this sort of movie, you'd expect like the guys that we're making fun of are like the war hawks and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Who just think like, oh,
Yeah.
we gotta blow them up first and all that sort of stuff. But
He
no,
takes
those are
his fair share of licks, you know, like he gets joked on a couple of times, but you know, he's probably the least the character who's the butt of the joke the fewest amount of times,
well, because
really.
he's right. We should
Yeah,
have treated them as a threat from the beginning. He's
exactly.
totally right.
He's right. Well, he's right. Like, really, what are the like? They embarrass him. They humiliate him,
They're the
but they're
idiots.
the idiots. Like, they look like
Yeah.
the morons for doing so, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah. In movies like that, it feels very much like it's taking shots at a particular kind, like the particular kind of cynicism that Annette Bening's character has at the beginning, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, human beings are the real monsters because we messed up the planet, and so these people, the only way that we can fix this is if aliens come to help us, right? Like that is a
Yeah.
form of cynicism that is very present in a lot of this kind of, especially like modern, you could say, alien movie. right? Like
Yeah.
Independence Day aside, because that's
Yes.
another similar thing, right? Actually, you know what? Honestly, Independence Day is a little bit like the serious version of this.
A little bit.
When you think about it, it's like two
Yeah.
sides of the same coin,
Yeah.
basically. Very similar movie.
I
Um,
I really I just really enjoy that this is sort of making fun of that type of person and attitude because you don't see a lot like that. I find it really funny and refreshing. I love the sort of like naive, like thinks he's smarter than he is, intellectual scientist man who assumes that the aliens must be peaceful and enlightened because they're technologically and scientifically advanced.
yeah,
And
because
then they,
technology and science are only ever used for good, of course.
yeah,
Yeah,
only ever used for good. And if we were more technologically and scientifically minded, of course, we would be peaceful and that would just solve everything. That must be what happened with them. We have a lot to learn from them. And then they just come down and start murdering and torturing people. And it's like, whoops. They missed all these really obvious signs. They like after they murder everyone in the Nevada desert, they're like, oh, there must have been some sort of miscommunication. It's like, oh my God,
Jesus
fucking
Christ, yeah.
morons. It's I don't know.
Oh, for
That's
some
really
reason, for some like little reason, they don't want all three branches of government present.
like I find that really interesting and unique. This movie is quite it feels a little bit like how Ghostbusters is kind of like a sort of I wouldn't call it right wing. I would just say that it's like pro business kind of movie. You know what I mean? In a
Yeah,
way that like it
a lot
leans a
of
bit more
movies
conservative than
currently
a lot
are.
of
Yeah,
movies do.
a lot of
I would
movies currently are afraid to be that. Yeah.
this movie right wing is too strong a term, but there is a sort of like conservative bent sort of to who we're making fun of the most, and I find that kind of fun. You know what I mean? Especially when the guy who's advocating for like we need to be prepared in case these aliens are dangerous. I love when he's like goddamn liberals, peace mongers, idiots. Yeah,
Peacemongers is a great word.
it
Like,
is a great word.
we need to bring that one back into rotation, just like retards. Okay. I know it's redundant.
I I enjoy this movie. This is a funny little story about idiots
Doing
and
idiot things because they're
doing.
idiots.
But then we have a few characters who are like weird and eccentric and have little strange stories, but they're the ones who help kind of save the day in the end. Like the kids who've played a bunch of video games being the ones to help shoot at the aliens and defeat them. I like the boxer who's trying to turn his life around, just punching a bunch of aliens and then heroically sacrificing himself. I like the kid and his dementia-ridden grandmother playing like old west yodeling music in order to save the day. All that sort of fun stuff.
Little
It's
details
goofy.
about him, like him being obsessed with donuts, just kind of really like. I don't know, man. It sells it. It's fun. I
Yeah,
like it. This is like vintage Tim Burton kind of schlock, and I'm here for
yeah,
it.
and I like making fun of hippies. Is that so wrong? I
I
I
don't
think
think so.
still my favorite moment in the movie is when they're like, "We come in peace," and everyone claps, and then they just throw a dove into the air with like no warning or setup. It's just there's a dove now. Like it's just such a good joke. Ah,
Oh yeah, and Pierce Brosnan, when Sarah Jessica Parker tells him like, "Oh my God, he's so ugly," he goes, "Well, be careful. We must look just as ugly to him." It's like,
Shut up, dude.
oh God, it's so
Great.
funny.
It's really good. A lot of good, fun comedic performances. I'm especially a big fan of like some of the goofy stuff Jack Nicholson and Glenn Close are doing. You know,
Real quick,
I
because a lot of people have been mentioning this in the chat. The song is called "Indian Love Call," and I have not mentioned it yet. But there you go, there you go. Clearly, you
yes,
want us to say it. It's "Indian Love Call."
yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like the way this movie looks too. It's very it's very like brightly lit and colorful in a way that a lot of movies aren't anymore. I mean, you could say that about a lot of movies from this time period, but I just really like the way this movie looks. It looks like a comedy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And some let's since this is spooky season, like we mentioned, this isn't exactly the spookiest movies, but the spookiest of movies, but there's a lot of, pretty fun horror stuff in this in terms of like people being experimented on by aliens and like they get like obliterated by lasers and they turn into like colorful skeletons. Like she reaches out for Michael J. Fox and he gets melted and she's just left holding his hand. The president.
If you stop to think about how utterly horrifying it is that they cut off her head and attached a dog's head to her body and then made her detached conscious head look at it
Yeah.
and like observe it. Like yeah, like
Yeah.
there's some horrifying scenarios.
There's objectively horrifying things in this, but it's all sort of played for like dark humor, which is fun. There's let's see, what else is there?
The robot chick or the alien chick who bites off Martin Short's finger and spits it into the Kennedy room fish tank when he tries to get the gum out of her mouth.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a little goofier than your normal horror movie, but like it's got its horror elements.
It's close enough to be spooky season.
Works for me. Although interesting, so we talked about how this was kind of a box office flop. Interesting decision, as I'm looking at the trailer here, to release this at Christmas. I wonder if that may have had something to do with it.
Well, that's the best time of year, but I guess the thing. Okay, so the pros and cons of releasing a movie at Christmas. Pro is it's one of the best times of year for people going to the movie theaters. It's that and middle of summer, right? Those are the two best times.
This
especially
seems like a middle of summer kind of movie.
You would think so. But Christmas is a really good time of year to release a movie, but it also depends on what you're up against, right?
Yeah.
Because that's when a lot of the biggest movies of the year are going to release. So you might get dwarfed by whatever comes out around it. So it's an interesting trade-off. I mean, it's not like a Halloween movie for sure, but it does feel a bit more summery, I would say. It feels like a summer movie.
Oh, that's actually kind of interesting. Independence Day was also released on Christmas. Apparently, it was ranked number 3 at the domestic box office. Christmas Day, 1996. So this was up against Independence Day.
Yeah, which is a misfortunate coincidence, I would say. Unfortunate. Anyway, Nosferatu is battling Sonic 3 this Christmas. Well, I have the feeling that Nosferatu might win that one. I don't know how popular are these Sonic movies.
That's a good question. I mean, I went to see the first one. I didn't go and see any of the others because Chris Chan wasn't in it, and so I lost all of the.
How disappointing!
I was expecting a documentary and saw that.
Blankface says there's a lot of movies nowadays are so dark. I hate it. I totally agree. This is a major pet peeve of mine. Here's the shortest possible explanation for why this has happened is that camera technology has gotten better, so now you don't have to do as much lighting. And so everything looks really dark and low contrast and like these really underlit, and I hate it. Improvements in camera technology have allowed shittier filmmakers to make stuff. You know what I mean? You don't have to be as good at lighting to get a proper exposure like you did when you had to shoot on film. And lenses have gotten better, camera sensors have gotten better, and now things can be a whole lot darker. And with a few exceptions of films and TV shows where the cinematographer clearly knows how to do that underlit, moody style well. I'm thinking of like Greig Fraser of the Dune and Batman movies, for example. He's probably the best at that particular style. Mostly, it's just a crutch. You don't have to spend as much time lighting because you don't need as many lights, and it's cheaper and quicker to film. And it's in right now, so everyone's sort of used to it and accepts it for some reason, even though I think it sucks. You look at any movie from like, I don't know, the 50s all the way to the early 2000s, and lighting was a thing back then.
I like how Blankface's those poor key grips not being utilized properly. Who's gonna keep them in cocaine? How are they gonna keep getting their booger sugar? This is something we really need to consider is the plight of the key grips.
Oh, I saw there's this meme from a while back where someone was like, "Men in LA, stop being influencers. We need gaffers. I can't see shit."
That's actually pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, it's
Also,
good.
to answer your question from earlier, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the original one, had a budget of $85 million, and it grossed 319 million worldwide.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, not apparently pretty popular.
Well, that's good. So it'll probably make more than Nosferatu then. But I suppose what I should have said is I don't think they're competing for the same
Yeah,
audience. But it looks like natural lighting. Yeah, I think there's an obsession with realism in lighting, especially, and I think that's unfortunate because I miss hair lights. No one ever thought that, no one is ever watching an old 90s movie and going like, "Oh, what's the source of that hair light that's helping distinguish them from the background?" It's just like it looks nice, and so you don't think about it. Obviously, you can push it too far so the lighting doesn't look realistic, and in some stories that would detract from the experience, but for the most part just fucking light it. Use 3-point lighting like we used to back in the day. Put little get little dings in the eyes and all the sorts of stuff that makes for good classic movie lighting. I miss it. Please, I'd like to be able to see what's happening. I would like things to look good instead of being a whole bunch of like bleh, blocky underlit mess where you can't even really see people's eyes and all that sort of stuff. And everything's really shallow focus because if you don't have a lot of light, then you have to open up the aperture to get a proper exposure, and then the focus is really shallow. And I hate that look. I'm sick of it. It's in everything nowadays. You look at any sort of movie from the 90s and it's so bright and colorful and well lit, and it's like, this is fun. I like this. Let's go back, please.
yeah, yeah. Let's do more of that, please.
Yes.
I really like also the set design in this movie. Something that sci-fi movies, modern sci-fi movies, probably for budgetary reasons, right? But like they're not doing as much anymore. These like big James Bondy, Doctor Strangelovey kind of sets where like when they're dissecting the Martian, they're in that large white room with a domed light over top, and then there's a strip of red, which is the room behind where people are observing, and it looks
Mhm.
fucking great, man.
Yeah.
It looks really cool. Please start doing stuff like that again. There's not enough of it. I would like to be able to I would like to be able to see some like fun adventure-y type stuff. The people
Yeah.
who used to work at Pinewood Studios on all the old James Bond movies. They deserve some respect for their villain lair set designs. All right, and it doesn't just
Yeah.
have to be for villain lairs. We can do it for anything. It's cool. It looks nice. Please bring it back.
I'm just like watching this trailer in the background, and like even the night scenes when they're in the White House and they're being attacked by aliens, it's like it's still pretty well lit because you don't actually need things to be hyper realistic in terms of the way they look, because everyone accepts the artifice of watching a movie. No one's going to be like, what exactly is the motivation for that light source if it makes things look nice and you can tell what's going on. Right? Movie night is something everyone is willing to just accept that it's brighter than it probably would look if you were actually there, within reason, of course. But like, I don't know why there's such an obsession with like lighting realism specifically.
Have you seen the meme of the Titanic movie lighting versus the Titanic realistic lighting?
No, I haven't.
So the
If you could
Titanic
find it,
movie, yeah. Let me
you
see if
post it in the chat for
I
me or
can
post it
find
on
it.
the
Yeah.
screen, something like that. Yeah, just make a really exaggerated moonlight. It's fun. There's that famous quote. It has to. It came from the Lord of the Rings production. I don't remember who said it or whatever, but someone was like, "Oh, where's that light coming from?" And someone said it's the same place the score is coming from. I think for a lot of types of films and stories, that's the attitude you should have. Same cinematographer as Empire Strikes Back. This movie. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, he did a really good job.
Yeah.
Did a really good job. I think Mars Attacks looks great, especially for the type of movie it is. Do,
All
do,
right.
do,
I
do.
think I got it. This is not a great one, but I've seen it before, and I'm just like, yeah, but uh, let's put this up on.
Cinematography, Peter Sashitsky. Is that how you say it?
So this is like the example of the meme, right? How with how she actually looked while she was sinking, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, but one of
Yeah.
them looks better for a movie,
Yeah.
so like
Yes,
I don't
exactly.
care.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
you wouldn't be able to see fucking shit going on
this is
in a
the bottom one.
Titanic
The
movie.
bottom one is the Titanic as directed by Zack Snyder or Mike Flanagan, and the top one is done by somebody who understands movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a generational thing for some reason. Just that style is so in right now, and I can't wait for it to be out. So Peter Sashitsky, cinematographer on Mars Attacks, his credits include a lot of what's his name, David Cronenberg movies, which is cool
Oh,
because I like
okay.
the way his movies look a lot. Let's see, I'm looking through his credits. A lot of things I don't recognize. What's the first thing I do? Oh, we did the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Interesting. He did Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Dead Ringers, a Cronenberg movie. Naked Lunch, Cronenberg, a lot of Cronenberg movies. Crash, Mars Attacks, a lot of Cronenberg movies. A History of Violence, Eastern Promises. Oh,
Oh,
speaking of
damn.
Eastern
Yeah,
Promises,
wait a minute. I love those.
Eastern Promises came out in 2007, and when I was watching it, I was like, "Man, this looks so different from most movies. Like it had such a old-fashioned look to it in terms of the way it's lit and with like a really deep focus and the way shots are just kind of very matter of fact in that. I don't know, there's something about the way that the movie was shot and lit that really stood out to me in a good way. Is like refreshing because so many movies don't look like that anymore. Interesting. He also did After Earth.
Another refreshing movie, very with my favorite actor, definitely my favorite family man. He's a really just a solid, well-to-do guy who who definitely does not get cucked by his wife.
Mr. Redhead asks, "Your favorite Cronenberg movie is Crash, isn't it?" I still actually haven't seen Crash, and the only reason is that a lot of Cronenberg movies aren't available to watch for free on any streaming services, and I just haven't felt like paying for it yet. I've been meaning to get around to seeing some of these. Embarrassingly, I still have not seen Crash or Videodrome or A History of Violence or some of his other really good movies. Of the ones I have seen, my favorite is probably The Fly. I really like The Fly. I really liked The Brood as well. The Brood's great. I was a pretty big fan of Crimes of the Future, actually. Got panned by a lot of critics, but I think it's pretty good. There's a lot of good stuff in that movie. Um, yeah, I like David Cronenberg quite a bit. So every time I watch one of his movies, I'm like, it's at least interesting. I liked Eastern Promises as well. The not Dead Ringer, the Dead Zone, the one with the young Christopher Walken, based on a Stephen King story. That one was okay.
Oh, we're
Um,
talking about Crash, based on the J.G. Ballard novel, not Crash, the one about racism being bad.
n-
Gotcha. Okay.
no,
For
that
a
is a
second, I was
different
like, wait a
Crash.
minute, that is not Cronenberg. No fucking way.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Crash, not the not the Oscar baity racism bad movie, but his Crash, which is about I don't know,
It's about people who
car
get
crashes and
turned
sex.
on by car crashes. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, I've heard really good things about History of Violence too. I really want
Oh,
to check
History of
that one out.
Violence fucking slaps, dude. That movie is great.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with Eastern Promises. Kind of a slow burn, but it really pays off. And The Fly, yeah, The Fly is just a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. That's probably his best movie. If you haven't seen The Brood, that's another one that doesn't quite get enough love. The Brood is very good. Have you seen The Brood?
No, I have not.
Here's my pitch for The Brood. You ready? David Cronenberg has said that The Brood is kind of like his take on Kramer versus Kramer.
Uh, oh, okay. uh,
Imagine a body horror version of Kramer versus Kramer.
I'm
If you
in.
can
I'm
imagine such a
sold.
thing,
Let's.
yes. Yeah.
I like it. Brundlefly is truly horrific. Yes, that is a fact. That is gross. I love it.
Yes, I really like that movie. Are there any other ones I'm forgetting? Because he's done a lot of movies. Oh, Scanners. Scanners is fun. It's not my favorite, but it does have some really cool stuff. Obviously, the famous
Crimes of the Future.
head exploding scene in Scanners is pretty fun. There's some other good stuff in there too. It's just maybe not quite as good as some of the others.
Crimes of the
The
Future. We
Brood.
also yeah talked about that
Uh,
one.
Matt Gilbert says The Brood is my favorite. Well, it's definitely up there for me. It's a great film. Great film. Really good stuff.
Oh, that
Oh,
is
apparently
interesting. I did not know that. Yeah. Sorry. Go
that
ahead.
that Tim Burton was almost going to make The Fly. That's an interesting. Yeah, that could have worked too, but I'm really happy with the direction they went with it. The Fly, masterpiece.
That is
Excellent
kind
film.
of coming full circle back to Tim Burton. I'm a little surprised Michael Keaton didn't show up in Mars Attacks anywhere, especially
Hmm.
given that this was like '90s Tim Burton when Michael Keaton were kind of working together. Like I mean, Beetlejuice and Batman. You know, they were
Yeah.
frequent collaborators. So
Let's see. I'm gonna look up Michael Keaton, seeing what he was doing in '96. Maybe that will explain why he wasn't in this movie. Perhaps. Let's see. Michael Keaton, 1996. He was in a movie called Multiplicity,
I
whatever
think I've
that
heard
is.
of that actually.
A man who never has enough time for the things he wants to do is offered the opportunity to have himself duplicated. Directed by Harold Ramis. Okay, never heard of that.
Oh,
Ma-
okay. So before Jack Nicholson took the role of the Las Vegas mogul, Michael Keaton was apparently considered, but and Johnny Depp was supposed to be considered for Michael J. Fox's role.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Jackie Brown was 97, so I don't think that would have been the conflict of times. Anyway, oof, that's a bad film.
Well,
Apparently, Multiplicity is not a good movie.
isn't
So
Pam
maybe that's
Grier in Jackie Brown? She is Jackie Brown, isn't she?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
so that would interesting.
Anywho, Mars Attacks. It's a fun little film. It's got a bunch of goofy stuff. Oh, it just showed up in the trailer, so I want to mention one of my favorite jokes in the whole movie. So there's a running gag where Natalie Portman's character is kind of like walking through the White House, and she's going to go into a certain room, and a Secret Service guy is like, "You can't go in there right now. There's a tour happening." And then later at the very end of the movie, when the White House is under siege by the aliens, the Secret Service is trying to escort them down to the bomb shelter or wherever the safe room in the White House. And Glenn Close is like, "Let's cut through here," and he's like, "No, there's a tour happening." And so they get shuttled a different way. I just like that they like can't really go where they want to go in their house because there are always tours happening. It's amusing.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Mr. Redhead is saying it's interesting how off the wall Tim Burton's movies were, and then all of a sudden he became Mr. God Awful CGI remake man. That is an interesting career change and shift. I mean, it starts at Planet of the Apes, really. That's his first remake, isn't it? That's where it happens.
I suppose you could say that.
Although that's not a
Yeah.
weird CGI one, right? Like,
No. Something went wrong with his obsession with CGI eventually. The same thing happened to Robert Zemeckis.
oh
Robert
yeah, Robert
Zemeckis,
Zemeckis.
he did obviously Back to the Future movies. He did Forrest Gump, all that sort of stuff. He's always been big into visual effects and stuff like that, and he used them in very inventive ways in his early movies. And then eventually he just hopped all in on like 3D animation. He
Yeah, and
obviously
he
did
made
the Polar
Beowulf in the
Express,
Polar Express.
Beowulf. Like he just like went full in on that, and it's like, okay, if you want to, man, but I'm not digging it. I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like he thinks that's the future, and so he jumps in with both feet into that, even though like A, it didn't age well, B, it really hasn't like people still kind of long for the practical stuff. You know what I mean? They find it the thing about visual effects, especially very CGI heavy films, I'm like obviously I'm not against CGI. It can be used to great effect in a lot of different things. But I think what people find is that when CGI isn't like absolutely perfectly photoreal and believable, it doesn't have the same charm as when practical effects aren't absolutely perfect and believable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like if you watch The Thing and you see those special effects, you're like, wow, this is fucking incredible. Look at all the work they did. You can still watch it and notice that like these are effects and that this isn't like a real creature. You know, it doesn't have to be perfectly believable at all times to still have like charm and visual interest and all that sort of stuff. Like it looks really cool. Whereas when CGI isn't like absolutely perfect, it doesn't it's not charming necessarily. I suppose like
I
maybe
mean,
there's a
like in
little charm.
this one kind of,
It's more the design of the creatures than the CGI for me,
yeah,
but I just think practical effects like a really nice matte painting to take an example. Like if
yeah,
you notice that it's a matte painting, it still has charm even if you're not fooled by it. I guess you could say. If even if the illusion isn't complete, you can still go, "Oh wow, that's a cool matte painting." But when it's a completely CGI background and it doesn't fool you completely, you're never like, "Oh man, look at that CGI background." You know, it just doesn't have the same effect.
yeah.
So like, I don't know if you're,
Well, I
you know,
mean, you
I
look at
watch.
The Thing, 1982, and The Thing, 2010, and you can kind of see exactly what the like the difference is, you know?
Yeah,
Like you've got on the one hand these practical effects that even though they don't, you know, they look otherworldly, they look strange, they don't look real,
yeah.
but there's just something about them that's tangible that feels really
I
interesting
think
to look
you.
at, right? And then you see the remake or the prequel, and
Mhm.
they've decided that like, oh well, the CGI, yeah, the practical effects don't look real enough. We need CGI to make it look realer, and it looks 10 times worse, and
Yeah,
it's not as charming or convincing, and as a result, most
yeah.
people don't remember that that movie even got made. So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think a big part of it is looking like it's actually in the space. Um, that's one of the things that like if CGI fails to accomplish that illusion, it really starts to break down, right? Obviously, CGI can be so good that it does totally look like it's really there in the space, like you could touch it if you were in the room. It's so much easier to do that with practical effects, that is to accomplish that feeling, right? That it's like, oh, that it's actually there, like tangibility. It's often a word used to describe that. Like it, you know, when it's in camera, or at least if it's like in another, it's in camera and that it's in a shot that's composited in, even it feels more real because it looks like you could actually touch it. And CGI like has a real big uncanny valley barrier to overcome in terms of that. If it nails it, if it has the time and the money and the resources to actually look like it's in the space. Like one thing I would say about a movie like Prometheus, which is, you know, not great in many respects. I think the CGI looks incredible in that movie.
honestly,
I
yeah,
think
no, the CGI looks really good.
it looks better than a lot of movies made today, and it came out like what, 10 years ago? It's been a while. Um, that CGI looks really good. Like a lot of those creatures look like they're in the space, and it's not all CGI. I think there's a little bit of animatronics and things like that, puppets and whatever else. But that CGI really holds up. So like, but if you don't nail it, it doesn't really have any charm. Whereas like even when things look dated, but like there's like a little puppet or something, you go, ah, look at the puppet. That's fun.
Yoda, that's another good example. You know, like
Yes.
the puppet. There's a reason they brought the puppet back for Baby Yoda, you know, instead of doing the CGI thing that he had
Yeah,
become
but
in
you
the.
can also, I mean, you can still mess up. Like I've
Yeah,
definitely seen some clips from the Baby Yoda puppet running around. It has a
yeah,
stupid little goober run that looks really dumb. But
yeah.
you know, if it were being silly and ridiculous, like if, in a different tone, it
Like a
wouldn't be.
Gremlins almost. You know, like
Yeah,
it would look a
exactly.
little better. But yeah,
Okay, so that almost makes me feel bad for a lot of VFX artists who mediocre practical effects take more skill. It's not the amount of skill. It's not the amount of skill. I think a lot of people recognize, well, maybe some don't. There's certainly some people who have a sort of ignorant view of how much effort goes into visual effects. They might have an attitude of like, oh, well, you just did it in a computer, therefore it was easy. Like that's definitely not true. But it's I don't think what people are appreciating on screen is the effort. It's more like that it looks tangible and real and physical. It's not so like obviously I can appreciate, okay, for example, the opening long, extended one-shot sequence at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, right? It's a very like imagine the effort and work that went into doing all of that with computer effects of the time. It's incredible. It doesn't really wow me because it's all like CGI. You know what I mean? Like I can be impressed with the actual effort that went into it, but the actual spectacle doesn't do a lot for me because it doesn't really look
Yeah,
real or
it's
convincing. And there's no, it's just, it does have that feeling of like, oh, you just threw a bunch of shit on screen. It's so cluttered and messy and chaotic that a lot of it doesn't look especially visually compelling to me. Like just compared to like the simple opening battle from A New Hope, for example. You know, I feel like one is way more compelling to me. And so while you can appreciate it's not really a matter of effort for me. Like I can appreciate all the work that goes into CGI even when it doesn't land and when it's not perfectly believable, but like that doesn't mean it has charm in the same way.
yeah, it's interesting because it's a little bit like they're
Oh no, we're
making.
gonna piss off the EFAP guys. Like I suppose I am one of the EFAP guys, but but yeah, no. I mean, I don't think this is a controversial take. I mean, I've definitely talked with them about it. Like you can appreciate the artistry and the effort that went into something, and just like I'm not really wowed or impressed by that sequence in terms of an aesthetic and storytelling experience. I can just go, yeah, I'm sure it took a lot of effort, but it doesn't do anything for me. I just don't find it compelling.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a little bit like, okay, so you look at a matte painting that's not perfectly convincing, and
Yeah.
for some reason, looking at that, I get more of it just looks better to me than a piece of CGI does
Well,
when
it was
it's not
actually captured.
particularly
It was
convincing.
captured on camera, and so it's like there in the space, and
Yeah, there's just something about that, and I don't know exactly what it is, right? That like for some reason bad CGI just looks worse to me than a not convincing matte painting or a
or
practical
puppet,
effect or
yeah,
a practical effect or a
or a
puppet.
squib or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
something like that. That and I'm not. I don't know exactly how to quantify that. It's just yeah. That's kind of how it is. I mean, in something like a Mars Attacks, right? Something like this, it doesn't bother me as much, right? I mean,
No, I mean because it's a goofy, silly, stupid movie. If
yeah,
the movie did have stop motion aliens with the same designs, which is what they intended for originally, I think I would probably like it a bit more. Probably because
yeah.
stop motion's fun and compelling. Um, and like them looking, I think I would appreciate it more. I think I'd like it a bit more, but I don't mind it as is because it's not going for hyper realism and failing in a dated sort of way. It's going for like really goofy, shitty B movie effects,
Yeah.
and it nails that.
But
You know
like
what I
one
mean?
of my favorite parts about this too is like when Pierce Brosnan is dissecting the murdered or like the killed Martian in that really
Hmm.
cool looking room. That's a puppet. Like there's a dummy there that they are
Oh
actually,
yeah.
yeah, which like, and that part I'm like, yeah, that looks great. Like I love that thing. That looks fucking awesome.
Another thing that I appreciate most about movies from this time period, especially if I think of like the classic Spielberg movies like Jurassic Park and E.T. and Jaws and all that sort of stuff, but specifically Jurassic Park because that was the first to incorporate CGI, is that movie basically used CGI where it couldn't use anything else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I feel like nowadays we get movies where they just default to CGI instead of using CGI only where it's impractical to use practical effects. But that's what a lot of 90s and early 2000s movies had. You know, for big wide shots where you need the aliens running around doing all sorts of stuff, you use CGI because that's what you have to do. But for other shots where you can actually have a dummy because it doesn't really move around, do that. Where you're going to blow up the Big Ben, make a little miniature of that and blow it up. You know, I think the perfect example of something like this is The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
The
Yep.
Lord of the Rings trilogy uses CGI where it has to and uses practical filmmaking techniques everywhere it can for budget reasons and for feasibility reasons. You know, they have a lot of miniatures, they have a lot of great, um, you know, like costuming and makeup and all that sort of fun stuff. But, you know, but for big wide shots where you need to have like a city in the distance and for a big helicopter shot, you use you use CGI. And there's some CGI that looks great in the movie. The Balrog, they clearly put a lot of their time and effort
Gollum.
into that. Gollum looks really good. But then there's in the Balrog scene where there's boulders falling from the ceiling. Those don't
Those
look
don't look
great.
great. Yeah.
No, so like they put their energy and effort in the right places, and I think that's sort of what everything should be aiming for. But nowadays we have a lot of things where they just default to CGI, and if you do that too much, then you definitely get into the territory like the prequels get into, where entire environments they're in are CGI and they don't look like they're in any space at all. There's a lack of tangibility, for lack of a better word. They don't feel like it doesn't feel real,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have the same charm it might have if they were up against a matte painting or something like that instead.
Yeah. And you can't qualify or quantify use value. Matt Gilbert in the chat says you can't quantify use value. You can't quantify subjective preference. Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to. I get that. I'm just trying to sort of like. I don't know if it's just subjective preference because I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. It's a difficult it's a difficult equation to solve, right? Like
Mhm.
why do I have such a bad reaction to poor CGI that doesn't happen when I have like, kind of misused or like worse looking practical effects.
Yeah.
And
We're just trying
tangibility
to
is
offer an
focused, right?
exploration of why so many people have that
Yeah.
feeling and opinion. First of all, someone said, "I know you guys ragged on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but the in-camera effects of that film were top-notch and very well done."
I think that's
That's
the only
true,
thing we praised about that movie, really,
and
is that and the costume design. They both
yeah,
like
and that
they look good. It's in isolation, but
yeah, I
movie
mean, the
sucks.
criticism of some of the design choices was that they don't serve the story particularly well, but the practical effects in that movie look really good, and like they're very well done. And I don't remember saying anything to the opposite. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. Yeah, Megalopolis even for a recent movie, they did a lot of like very practical stuff where they could, and I think it looked pretty decent, and then they did some CGI too, which looked fine. I mean, I just think there's something to be said for stuff that you actually shoot in camera
Yeah.
because it saves you a lot of time and effort trying to recreate the feeling that it was shot in camera, which can be very, very difficult to do if you don't get really talented VFX artists and give them a lot of time and money to do it. Um, I just think there's something kind of fun, especially for a movie like this, which is, a goofy, campy B movie. There's some fun to be had, like like when the when the dove blows up. Like that's like a mix of practical and
Yeah.
CGI and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun to be had there.
The melting of the people into the red and green skeletons in this movie is
Mm.
also really like kind of a fun mix, you know. Uh yeah, that's anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
CGI. CGI
to,
is
to
good in moderation, I think, is generally the
yeah. I mean, I
bad
just
CGI anyway. I like it when it's good.
you can overdo it, and if you're going to come up against the problem of like what if your choice is it's never this simple, but let's say the choice actually was comparably expensive practical effects that don't quite look 100% convincing or CGI that doesn't look 100% convincing, I would always aim for practical that doesn't look convincing because at least it has that sort of like, look at that, they actually built a puppet. People like that sort of thing and they tend to prefer it more. That seems pretty obvious. I'm definitely not the type of person who thinks that like we should not do VFX at all or
Yeah.
or is obsessed with practical effects or even discounts the work and effort of visual effects artists because it does take a lot of coordination and effort to do it well. But I just when they come up short, doesn't do
It
anything for
feels,
me.
yeah, for some reason it just feels worse to me when it comes up short as opposed to when practical.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Van Helsing is a fun example of that too. There's a lot of practical mixed with CGI.
Hmm.
And I really like the practical stuff to the point where like I even kind of enjoy the CGI Mr. Hyde, who's it like in the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie. That is, I think, the same model as the cave troll from Lord of the Rings because
Oh, interesting.
available at the time.
Yeah.
Like
I And that's how I feel about that.
Yeah. Jurassic Park also still looks pretty
Yeah,
good. Like you
that
ignored
that
Attack.
seems like the best way of doing it for me, where you use CGI where you have to,
Yeah.
essentially. And I think because it's cheaper, people have leaned on it a little too heavily. It's also cheaper to shoot your movie with just like lights in the ceiling, and then you don't need to change lighting setups when you change angles, and you can just have like big lights in the ceiling on soft boxes, and everything looks kind of underlit, and you're not really sculpting the light, and you shoot on really fast lenses with a really sensitive camera sensor, so you don't really need to light much, and everything is sort of underlit and has a really shallow depth of field. That is cheaper than shooting like any 90s movie did in terms of the lighting setup. You can do that too if you want, but I'm sick of it. It doesn't look as good.
Yeah. Agreed. This movie though looks fun. It's goofy, it's bright, having fun with itself. I like it.
Mhm.
Recommend. That's the moral of the story. Go watch Mars Attacks. That's the moral.
Yeah, it's fun. It's goofy. And it holds up pretty well. It
Yeah.
holds up pretty well. I think, speaking of the conversation of just CGI and how well it ages, I think because it was supposed to look kind of shitty at the time, that has helped it in the
Yes.
long run.
Agreed. Well, and they also do a lot of devotion to the practical stuff as well, right? Like the sets are done up in a very schlocky kind of fun way that like it enhances it.
True.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I miss miniatures too.
Yeah, me too.
I miss miniatures. I'd like to see more of them. There's a lot of fun you can have with miniatures. Watching some of these old Universal monster movies, there's a lot of like wide shots of castles that are obviously miniatures, but it's just fun. It's like, look at that.
No, you haven't seen The Invisible Man yet, have you?
No, I haven't, but that's
Oh,
on the
that one
list.
is a lot of fun, man. That is a. I'm excited to talk about that eventually.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else to say about Mars Attacks?
I think we've pretty much covered it.
That's the gist of the movie. It's a silly, fun time, and I highly recommend it. Do we know? I guess we don't know what we're covering next week yet. Are we pulling another thing out of the bucket, or are we talking about the Invisible Man? What are we doing?
We're pulling one out of the bucket. Let me make sure I've got them here. I don't.
It's funny, people are talking about The Volume in chat. The Volume it is interesting because it's sort of, when it came out, everyone's like, "Oh, this is the future. This is the next big thing," and then its reputation dropped really quickly. The Volume is really interesting, and I've seen some other things that aren't necessarily The Volume specifically, but similar techniques wherein like what you're gonna put as the background, whether it's CGI created or whether it's shot elsewhere, is on a screen that is actually you can capture in camera, and the actors can actually see what's happening. I think Poor Things did a lot of that with like giant LED screens as well. I think it's just another thing. It's all on how you use it. You know what I mean? I think it can be used to great effect, and it can help with that CGI background look. It can help the actors with their performances, and it can help with making it look like that's really the background of the scene we're in right now, rather than something that's purely on a green screen, because green and blue screens can have trouble with like casting green and blue light onto the actors and the sets and all that sort of stuff. It can be hard to key out, all that sort of fun stuff. I think the Volume is, very useful and very cool innovation, but it isn't exactly cheap either, which is interesting. But it's all how you use it. When it came out, everyone's like, "Oh, this is the next big thing," and then a couple bad examples of how not to use it come about, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, maybe not."
All right, I have them. I have the cards. I can pull. We can pull one movie, and I will read this time the themed meal that is supposed to go with it, so that everybody can know all the fun stuff that my girlfriend and I are doing without you people. Let's go. You want to give me a drum roll, Jamie?
We've established that we don't have a drum roll, so I'm going to do golf clapping instead.
Okay, golf clapping sounds perfect. All right. And we are going to be... Oh, The Sixth Sense. That's the next one, The Sixth Sense. All right. tomato pie and or cheesesteak because it takes place in Philadelphia, and lemon pound cake. I'm not really. How does that one tie in? I don't know. Interesting, but yeah, that apparently
Sure.
also a Philadelphia
Why not?
staple, I guess. We are watching The Sixth Sense. That'll be
All
the
right.
next one. I don't know if
Sure.
Nikki's seen that before. Was that one of the ones that you remember talking
Talking to
being?
me?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know
I mean,
which ones that she sent.
I know which ones I helped her cross off the list because I know they suck. Like for example, one of the ones that was on the short list was "Let's Scare Jessica to Death," which sounds intriguing because it has a great title, but it's actually a really boring, shitty '70s movie. So,
Okay.
so I'm like, well, let's not do that one. But
So
this is,
was the Sixth Sense one of the ones that you were like,
I'm
yeah?
sure, yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
cool. Yeah,
I remember
we've talked
liking it.
about Trap.
Yeah, we've talked about some of his other movies. I wouldn't mind revisiting the good one. Yeah, why not? I haven't seen it in a long time, so we can rewatch that.
Perfect.
I guess that's horror enough, right? Because
Yeah,
ghosts.
yeah. It's like it's another horror adjacent kind of spook.
I feel like our whole month is just going to be horror adjacent movies, but that's all right.
We're good. And maybe we'll get a big scary one by the time the end of the project rolls around.
Well, we have both seen that movie, so I don't think we're going to spoil it for us. I think we both know the twist, but we just
What?
haven't seen
There's a
it in a long
twist?
time.
I've never heard that before.
um, is there anything else recently you've seen or watched that we could highlight or give a brief thing on? Because I have a couple things that I've seen recently that I'd like to recommend and or not recommend.
Well, you
Have
go.
you?
Let me think about that for a second, and you go for it. I will. I've been watching a lot of stuff, so I might have a
Okay.
couple recommendations, but a lot of it's been crap. So
Let's see. Sort by when.
well, I can tell you right now, all of the Invisible Man series of Universal monsters that I've seen, they have all hit for me. I've had a really good time with them. They have a lot more comedy going for them. The first one is still my favorite. James Whale is one heck of a director. But I watched The Invisible Woman, and I didn't
Oh,
hate
is
it.
that the guy who directed Frankenstein, right?
Same guy, yeah.
Wow, that was my favorite part about Frankenstein was the direction and the set design and the cinematography. So that's cool. I'm excited
Yeah,
for that.
his Invisible Man is awesome. So I really like that. I might do a little bit of a deep dive into some of his others. The Old Dark House in 1932. That's one of his. That's like his immediate follow up to Frankenstein.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I really enjoy the Invisible Man, the first one, but then Vincent Price as the second Invisible Man in the Invisible Man Returns is also fun and enjoyable, a good little romp. And then the Invisible Woman, which has nothing to do with any of the others, um, is just kind of funny. Actually,
Yeah.
it's got a it's got a very different feel, but I liked it. So I can understand for sure why the Abbott and Costello ones with Invisible Man kind of hit. Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
We should definitely do an Invisible Man one because I'm quite excited for that. So far, my favorite of those is the Wolf Man because I enjoyed that more than I expected to. So I'm excited. If it's even better than that, I'm very excited. So something I wanted to recommend is a movie that I saw for the first time recently. It is a 1963 movie called Charade, starring Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant. It was really good. I really liked it. It's a really fun, twisty, turny thriller type movie. I don't want to spoil much about it, except that it's really, really, really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. It's good, old-fashioned, fun movie with a lot of fun twists in it. Highly recommend it. Um, that's an easy recommend. I also watched an old musical called Top Hat, which is a Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movie from 1935, which is pretty fun if you're into that sort of thing. Um, and you, Hugh, have not seen Joker 2. I told you specifically that you don't need to bother paying the money to go see it in the theaters.
I appreciate
Um,
that. I don't. We've talked about it before. I like Joker enough. I think it's a good movie. I
Yeah,
don't
I
really
like Joker. I
I
think
don't
Joker's
really
good.
care about the sequel. Like I can leave Joker uh, as its own. I'll watch Folia Dukes when it comes out on streaming.
Well, here's the thing. If Folie à Deux was really, really good, I'd be like, yeah, I know a sequel's not necessarily necessary to the first movie. It has its own complete story. But if it was really good, I'd be like, well, you should still check it out because they built on the story in a really good way and they did some fun stuff. But I don't think the story's very good. I don't think the story of Joker 2 is very good at all. I think it gets worse the more you think about it. It's a very kind of divisive movie in some ways. I think a lot of the hate the movie gets is maybe a tad overblown, but has a lot of problems. What I'm happy to report is that I actually quite liked the musical elements of the movie. I wasn't quite sure how those would turn out, but for a musical that's come out in the last 20 years, it's surprisingly good in that department.
Well,
But
that's
the
nice.
story
That's
the
nice.
story has a lot of problems, and so at the very least, I would not rush out to the theater to go see it.
I'll
Topaz
watch the
did this.
EFAP coverage.
Yeah, Topaz says Charade is. I was shocked to find out was not directed by Hitchcock. Yeah, I watched it right after North by Northwest, and it has a similar feel. It is not a Hitchcock movie, but it does feel like one. It's quite good. Yeah, people are saying it. Matt Gilbert says it's not nearly as bad as people make it out. Yeah, it's. I'm not quite sure how bad it is. I have to think about it more, but it's certainly not as good as the first one. I don't know if it's like hateable territory, but it's definitely a step down at the very, very least.
Oh, here's one that I watched recently that I would recommend. Rebecca. Speaking of Hitchcock movies, I watched Rebecca and I liked it. I thought it was really interesting.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It
1940,
it was his
Rebecca.
first American movie,
Oh,
and
Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine. Okay, put
yeah,
that on the list. Is that a noir movie?
yeah, it is a like a strange mystery noir. It's a lot of fun. I don't want to spoil anything because it's good. It's really good. It is the only one of his films also that won Best Picture.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so.
I'll have to check that out too. I like Hitchcock movies and that sort of style of fun, twisty thriller.
All right, well, that's my recommends for the week. And Sixth Sense, we revisit for next weekend. It'll be good. I don't
Yeah.
know if Nikki's seen this one actually. She might have only heard of it and never watched it, so that'll be kind of a fun one.
Mr. Redhead says, "Is The Birds one of Hitchcock's more underrated or overrated movies?" I am not sure exactly how well it's rated, but I did not like The Birds. I thought The Birds kind of sucked, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I didn't care for it. I don't think I had as visceral of a reaction as you did when you texted me about watching it, but I didn't.
I was very underwhelmed.
Yeah,
Everyone had talked it up like it's this great Hitchcock classic, and I'm like, this kind of sucks, actually. I'm not a fan. I was really, really unimpressed by The Birds. First of all, it's very boring. Um, yeah, the story just didn't do anything for me at all.
yeah, I didn't care for it when I watched it. I
The
was like,
Martians really hated it. Trayvon Washington. True.
eh.
Correct. They're not a fan of the birds.
Maybe
They
that
actually
maybe that
came.
means Jamie's a Martian. Hmm.
They came here to liberate us from the birds. Actually,
They saw Hitchcock and they were like, this.
not one of Hitchcock's better movies, in my opinion. So assuming it seems to be pretty well reviewed. So assuming it is, I would say it's overrated. That's what I'd say. The Birds, 1963, has a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, fuck that. No way. Let's see what the actual score is. Oh, this is crazy. This is why I fucking hate Rotten Tomatoes. All right, so Rotten Tomatoes says critics score 94. You click on it. The actual rating out of 10 is a 6.7.
Oh, fuck off. Okay, yeah,
But
nah.
it's obviously actually no. Wait. Oh, sorry, that was top critics. Excuse me. All critics, the score is actually an 8.3. Not a 94, but still, the way they do things is really annoying. Yes, that movie is transcendently overrated.
I'm inclined to agree, but I haven't seen it in forever.
What's
So
better, The Birds or Birdemic? Well, Birdemic's a more enjoyable watch, in my opinion.
Hot fucking take. I don't think I've seen Birdemic actually,
Yeah.
so I
Some
can't.
Topaz dude says hot take Hitchcock I find overrated. Well, he's made some bangers, and that's
Yeah,
that's
North by
enough.
Northwest and Rebecca. Honestly,
And
Rebecca's.
Psycho, I
Oh, and
really
Psycho.
like
Yeah, I like
Psycho.
Psycho a lot.
I'm also a fan of Shadow of a Doubt, not one of his more famous movies, but I quite liked that. And there's a few I still haven't seen. Like I haven't seen Rope. That's another one that gets a lot of love. So, you know, I haven't seen all of his movies to say definitively. Oh, Vertigo and Rear Window.
Oh yeah,
Shit. No, he's made some really good movies. It maybe if people call him like one of the greatest of all time, that's a little bit of an overstatement, but he's got a lot of great movies. Yeah, yes, Exhumed Legume. I am aware, and yes, I don't think a lot of people know this, unfortunately, yet that like 94% fresh just means 94 gave it a 3 out of 5 or higher, which is such a
yeah. It's a
stupid way of
dumb
doing
fucking
it.
rating system.
It's really annoying. I hate it so much. But yeah, even still, even if the score was a 6.7 out of 10, I think that's an overstatement.
When like studios know that that's how they do it, and then they'll give some of those like little guys who run movie blogs kickbacks essentially, and like
Hmm.
favors to write a, well, you don't have to be like super positive, just make sure you give it like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, just
And
make
yeah,
sure you give it a better than worse type score. And a lot of times, some of those reviews don't even have scores in them, and so it's just guessed, I guess,
yeah,
by people who worked at Rotten Tomatoes. It's so stupid. There's a really great expose kind of calling out a lot of this stuff that I found really interesting. I don't think it got enough play because some people, you know, who criticize critics pointed to it like, yeah, obviously they cheat the system. It's like, no, no, no. If you read the article, it's actually really interesting how specifically they go
yeah,
about it. I wish more people gave that article a read. It was good. Yep.
yeah. Well,
Well, I don't have anything else to say. So get the fuck out of here.
yeah,
Go away. Go live your life. Don't I would say if you haven't seen Joker 2, don't really go bother seeing it in the theaters. Just wait till it comes out. Uh I don't know if anyone's going to be so passionate about it that it'll be worth the, $15 to $20 you pay for a ticket these days.
yeah. It feels a little bit like it. At least I haven't heard too many people talking about it the way that I did, with Joker 1. Because with Joker 1, very highly controversial in certain circles.
Really stupidly controversial.
Stupidly controversial, yeah. I
Yes.
remember hearing
The discourse.
a guy I worked with tell me that he was afraid of going to the theater for Joker because he knew it was gonna be like a hotbed, like lightning rod movie for incel terrorists, like incel domestic terrorists.
So
Um,
ridiculous, dude.
shut the fuck up, dude. This is the same guy who told me that he Watchmen was his favorite book. And then when I tried to talk to him about it, because I too enjoy Watchmen, the book, he spent a good portion of time ripping Watchmen apart for being homophobic and racist, and it has a lot of problems. I like it, but it's a particularly insensitive book, and it's problematic, and it should be fixed. You know,
Like, do you
um,
like this or
do
not?
you do you even enjoy that? You said you liked it, dude. What are we talking about here?
Hmm. Well, so the other thing Jay Jameson mentions really quick, well, it disagrees with the progressive stacks evaluation of reality. The thing about Joker 1 is that it kind of disagrees with everyone's evaluation of reality in some sense. Like, it doesn't really fit neatly into any side's particular vision of things. That's sort of that's part of why I guess it was so controversial. You know what I mean? But like for people who aren't like super politically minded, a lot of people are just like, ah, it's a pretty good movie, or they disliked it for whatever specific story reasons. But like, it doesn't really fit neatly into any camp, and I think that's one of the things to appreciate about it. Honestly, I like Joker 1. Joker 2 was not as good. That is for damn sure. But you know what was good? Mars Attacks. Ack,
Yeah.
ack, ack, ack,
Ack,
ack,
ack,
ack.
ack, 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 ack. Goodbye, everybody.